city clerk. She will make sure the speakers are called upon at the appropriate time. At this time, I will call to order and convene the City Council and City Council as housing successor agency for the City of Grand Terrace. This is our regular meeting of February 13th, 2018. Tonight's invocation will be given by Council Member Doug Wilson, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by City Manager Harold Duffy. If you would please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, the Eternal Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to gather as a group of thy children here to learn and to grow. We're thankful for this city, and we're thankful for the folks that are so involved in making it good and a clean place for us to live and safe. We're thankful for the efforts of all who are concerned. We're thankful for the many blessings that we enjoy in this life. We ask a special blessing upon us that we might have a measure of thy intelligence, that as we go about our business tonight, that we might be able to dedicate these things unto thee and mind with thee. We ask, Father, that we might have a special blessing upon those who are without, and for all those who are first responders, that thou might bless them, that they might be protected, that they might be able to return to their homes in safety. These things we thank thee for and ask thee, and for all the things that we stand in need of, we see in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag that's right over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Henderson,
Present.
Councilmember Hussey,
Present.
Councilmember Wilson,
I am here.
Mayor Pro Tem Robles. Present. Mayor McNabo.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Start with the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, so we will act upon them at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any requests to remove an item from the consent calendar at this time?
I do the minutes.
All right. Okay, that's item 2. Any others? All right. Is there a motion for the balance?
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes with Council Members Henderson, Hussey, Wilson voting yes, Mayor McNabo voting yes on items 1, 3, and 4.
Okay. I think Mayor Pro Tem
Yeah,
was
my
locked
button
out of the
didn't
vote.
Okay.
Were you voting yes?
Mhm.
She was voting yes on the balance. Okay. So item number 2, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, on page, packet number B2, second paragraph says the city will start receiving the first revenues from the gas tax, which has a surplus of $3.1 million. I know that's a confluence of probably what I said, so I think it's just easier to say the city will start receiving its first revenues from the gas tax and leave it at that, and not try to figure out what the $3.1 million was about.
Or why it's a surplus at this time.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So with that correction, would you,
Madam Mayor,
Madam City Attorney, or Mr. City Attorney?
I have
Pardon me.
one that I would like to offer also. On packet page 14, there is a gray box about the middle of the page, and it says result failed. May I suggest a language to the effect that motion died for lack of a second instead of the word failed? That's all.
I can live with that.
Oh, good.
All right. So with those corrections, would anyone like to make a motion with for the minutes
I
with
move
those corrections?
approval of the minutes as corrected.
Second?
A second.
All right. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilmember Hussey. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously with Council Members Henderson, Hussey, and Wilson voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Robles voting yes, and Mayor McNabo voting yes.
All right, thank you. We'll move to public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items not on our regular agenda. Based on restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. During public comment, we may ask that a matter be agendized for a future meeting or for a brief response from staff to questions. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak during this time? Thank you. All right, our first speaker is Mark Cloud. Thank you, Mr. Cloud. At some point, hopefully in the near future, we can have an update on some of the instability we've been having with the electricity in the city.
Absolutely. Wow, that's great. Is that part of the instability you were referring to? Absolutely. And if I don't have an answer for you on really any subject within the company, I can get someone to the table who has the answers. So absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. All right, our next speaker is Frank Audi.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I'm here this is my first time here, and my story is too long to cover in 3 minutes. I was doing business across the street at La Crosse, and I get invitation from the city to come to their Chamber of Commerce, to come to their meeting. When I belonged to Colton, and I thought this city is a haven. I moved here 2 years ago, and I cannot do a single business. I've been paying rent where I am. I've been doing everything, paying electricity, paying people to put my place in order, but I was not being able to do any business because of the city red tape. You know, I thought that this country, the spirit of the law, is to correct people, not to punish people. But for nothing at all, no reason at all, I've been punished maybe the last 3 months so severely, so cruelly, that I couldn't take it. So I pray to you guys to I asked the lady at the Building and Safety that if you guys have an administrative hearing, which is in all other cities, but she said, no, we don't have that system. So I need to get my case across because I've been harassed. I've been not even, my dignity is not respected. My privacy is not respected, okay, by the code enforcement. Thank you very much. And I know I can cover all the 2 years experience with 3 minutes. So I thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Audi, and to bring your concerns. I'm going to have staff follow up with you, and I will see what I can do to find out more about your
thank you very much.
situation.
Thank you.
All right, and our third speaker is Janice Makshinoff.
Hi. Do you have to give my address? No? Anyway, I have a question that I would like to have answered. Does our city staff members have the right to enter my private property, which is clearly posted, no trespassing, without first getting my written consent, even if it was directed by the city manager? I know federal law protects my property and privacy rights, but does Grand Terrace have different laws?
Mr. City Attorney, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of council, I need a lot more details to analyze it, but would be happy to follow up on it.
Okay. I'm going to have the city attorney call you if that's all right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right. Any other requests to speak at this time? All right, so I will close public comment at this time and bring it back to council members for their communications. Our first report will be from Councilmember Kenneth Henderson, and he actually has item number 5. So does this mean that once you give your report, we will open it for public comment?
I don't know that I can answer the question, Mayor. I can tell you why I elected to write a report rather than provide the council, staff, and the community a summary of the conference that I attended. As a new council member, I attended League of California Cities training for new mayors and new councils. It was an excellent training, 2.5 days. The process was fairly extensive, and I thought that it would be best if the report that I provided to council and the community would be in writing so it could be referred to in the future by those who are interested. I believe that if I attempted to summarize the conference within a few minutes, there would be much that I would leave out, and likely as not, there would be much that you would have forgotten 10 minutes after I said what I said. So with that, as a preface, the City Council agenda contains a written report from me to the council regarding the 2.5 days for this particular conference. The major topics covered, the major issues covered, things that the council will probably likely take up in the future at some point in time. Excuse me. And so I would encourage all of you at your leisure to take a look at that written report, refer to it as often as you choose to, provide it to your neighbors and friends. I believe that it may be, depending on circumstances, the first of a number of such reports. The other major activity I was engaged in, the City Council, Planning Commission, received workplace harassment training from one of the trainers at the League of California Cities. It was excellent. Something that obviously is topical in the news daily, it seems. And so the training provided stands the City Council, Planning Commission, and others, staff, in good stead as we go forward. That concludes my remarks, Mayor.
Thank you, and I appreciated the report that you wrote. I've read it. Were there any, since this is an item, I think I can ask for if
Certainly.
any of my colleagues have questions. Is that true, Mr. City Attorney? All right,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. You have a question, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Henderson, as you know, I'm very interested in how we're going to fund our repairs to our local roads, given the fact that our state situation is a link to the sandbag funding, and we have a fairly healthy chunk of money that's going to be spent on the overpass here, as we are already engaged in doing that. It's $91 million. My point had been to some of our state assembly people was you fund our regional transportation and then you dump it on our little town roads, and you sucked all the money away for us to be able to do that, to repair those things. So how can we try to come back up to it? And so I was really interested in this. Probably the most important change is the switch, and this is relation to California Environmental Quality Act. Most important change is the switch from level of service, which is LOS, to vehicle miles traveled, VMT, and evaluating and mitigating identified impacts. Obviously, some of these, let's say, rural areas, even though they had a level of service demand that was an arterial, it makes a whole lot more sense to use the vehicle miles traveled. Can you maybe shed a little light on, a little more light in relation to that? Looks like there was a 31-page technical advisory on it, and I'm especially interested because we have several roads in this area that are, really under the gun. So how does the VMT work instead of the LOS?
Well, as you're aware, sir, typically most communities adopt a level of service C for their roads and thoroughfares. Under vehicle miles traveled, that is the methodology that can be employed, will go into effect January 1st, 2020, and can go into effect immediately if, again, this is the lead agency in a particular project. Why I thought this was important is because we have taken receipt of a 131-acre specific plan from the Lewis Group, and I thought that it would be important for staff to analyze which approach would be most advantageous to the city, vehicle miles traveled or level of service. If that project goes as contemplated and we attract users, patrons, customers to the city of Grand Terrace, and we eliminate to a degree the need for our citizens to travel elsewhere to purchase goods and services, vehicle miles traveled may in fact be advantageous. But the idea is to have us take a look at whether or not, in the context of that particular project, whether level of service or vehicle miles traveled would serve to benefit the city of Grand Terrace.
I really appreciate your analysis, and I agree with it. The main thing that I think about is all those truck miles that went on Barton Road for so many years. And, not to beat a dead horse, but unfortunately we had very little money programmed to be able to reliably take care or maintain our roads, especially some of our main drags. And now we're in a situation where we've got a 5-year plan. I think it's a good plan, but it is an expensive plan because roads, as I pointed out in the past, are funny. Once they start to go to pot, they end up as potholes. And so I think this just might help us a little bit to get a real evaluation of what the road wear is going to be like.
I agree with you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Councilmember Henderson at this time? All right. Thank you again, sir, for your report. We'll go to Councilmember Hussey.
I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for coming out here tonight. And Mayor, I don't have anything to report at this time. I hope I'm not yelling in this mic. No, we're good? All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson.
I'd like to echo Councilman Henderson's analysis of the harassment seminar that we went to. The woman that instructed us in relation to this, and even though it's required, I thought it was perfect timing. She identified herself as a person that talks a mile a minute, and she was right, but boy was she informed. And I found it so important that I kept the narrative, and I'm planning on using it for my future classes with the students that I teach in different circumstances. I run into a lot of felons, and it would probably help them to understand what the new world's about. For some reason, they don't seem to be able to kind of catch the idea. So I thought it was well-timed, and I really appreciate staff arranging for that seminar, and I think we're loaded for bear with information that we needed. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Yes, Mayor. I'll keep this short. I did have Omatrans Board of Directors meeting, and the most important discussion that we had was a recent, I think it was USC study. You probably have it, but I'm going to send it to all of you. And it's about, we've been operating on transportation planning under the premise that millennials don't like to drive, and they're going to be using mass transit, and that's the way of the future. And now it's turned out even low to low moderate income people have been purchasing cars and preferring to use their cars, including the millennials, and many of the millennials are moving eastward where they can afford homes, but their jobs are in the LA basin. So there was a discussion that in the bus government entities were always looking to increase ridership, and so that was brought up by County Supervisor Janet Rutherford. Is that really our goal now? So it was a long discussion about rethinking that. And also, when I went to the League of Cities for the revenue taxation, I shared a cab with, and they paid for it, the City of Chino Hills, Councilwoman Moran, and there was a discussion because, you know, Chino Hills had a big fight to underground all their Edison towers. So I told her how I've been talking to staff over a number of years about our gateway coming up Mount Vernon is kind of ugly because we have all these towers, and could there not be some kind of passive use? And she suggested we talk to our Edison rep, and we've, as I talked to Mr. Cloud, there's just nobody had been really showing up here. So it was just fortunate that the city manager set up a meeting, and we talked about the potential for use of that land, and it's available. So that's something I guess our Parks and Recreation Commission can mull over as part of it, maybe adjusting our master plan a little bit and bringing before the council some options in that arena. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. I attended a SBCTA board meeting, so I'll report on items not on the general policy and Metro Valley study session agendas that I've already reported on, except for one item. We had a closed session with legal counsel and anticipated litigation, so staff was given direction by the board. Under consent items, we adopted a resolution to become part of the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, California Van Pool Authority. We also received the first half of the fiscal year railroad right-of-way grants. For the grants of use report, we received a report on the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority rights-of-way interest and overview of Metrolink stations. One of the interesting ones, we approved an agreement with the East Street Plaza providing a reciprocal easement for pedestrian access to the San Bernardino Transit Center, which is a long way of saying there was a shopping center next to the transit center, and they provided a really easy way for people at the shopping center to cross over into the transit center, so that it made it a whole lot simpler for them to get over to the transit center if they wanted to take the transit system to the actual shopping plaza, so they didn't have to walk around a whole street block. We approved issuance of requests for qualification to pre-qualify general contractors for the Redlands Passenger Rail Project. So if any of you are following the Redlands Passenger Rail, it is moving forward. They are pre-qualifying their contractors at this time. We approved the reallocation of fiscal year 2015-16 low carbon transit operations program. There was a funding that was given to Ontario Airport Shuttle Service in a pilot program. They hadn't been able to use it up to this point, so not wanting to lose those funds, they have transferred it to the Omnitrans Freeway Express pilot program serving Yucaipa, Redlands, Hospitality Lane, and San Bernardino Transit Center. We also approved a memorandum of understanding between Southern California Association of Governments, Omnitrans, Victor Valley Transit Authority for carrying out the metropolitan transportation planning process. I imagine they will probably be looking at it differently now with the idea that millennials are not riding as much mass transit. Under discussion items, we had hearings to consider, adoption of resolutions of necessity for parcels needed for the Redlands Passenger Rail Project. They removed all but one from consideration, and that one was for the temporary construction easement for that parcel, and that was adopted. We received the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority's comprehensive annual financial report and the audit of the State Transit Assistant Fund, audited the local transportation fund, and the single audit compliance report for the fiscal year 2016-17. We approved a contract with the Center for Sustainable Energy to develop a San Bernardino countywide zero-emission vehicle readiness implementation plan, which is going to be very important because as we move to zero-emission vehicles, we're going to need a place for them to be charged. And to date, I don't know that the infrastructure is strong enough for people to make that switch. So that's an important thing to be looking at. And lastly, under the Council of Governments, this council discussed last time the idea that the Council of Governments was wanting to fund a full-time staff person. The funding sources had changed, and at this time they have funding for about a half a staff person, and the rest of that time the person is allocated to the Transportation Authority. Through the discussion, it was decided that at this time no additional funding will be assessed to the member agencies. There's a substantial amount of budget that is left from when we were the administrators of the HERO program. And the decision of the board was that we wanted to have staff go back and look at what's remaining in the budget, what can be used. It looks like it would be funding for the next 6 years towards Council of Governments activities. But we also asked that staff go back and review the items and come back with a different set of goals and priorities. And so there will not be an additional assessment to the member agencies, and stay tuned for the rest of the story. I enjoyed the January 31st sexual harassment prevention training, as did my colleagues. I think you were calling it sexual harassment training. I learned about prevention. It was very well done, as my colleagues said. On February 2nd, I represented the city at the Rosa Parks statue unveiling at the Caltrans building lobby in downtown San Bernardino. It was a wonderfully attended event. Our Assembly Member Reyes was the keynote speaker. And for those of you that are interested in seeing this wonderful statue, it's in the lobby, and so it is open to the public to view it during this time. And on February 10th, I was honored to represent the city again at the Unforgettables Foundation's annual luncheon, where they recognize, I'm not sure the number, but so many different volunteers that give so much of their time and energy. And they go into Riverside County as well as San Bernardino County to recognize all of these volunteers. 2 from our city were honored. That was Nicole Littlefield and Michelle Ray. So it was very nice to be there in support of them. And then as it turns out, we actually have a resident of the city who was honored through Loma Linda. So I need to get with the city clerk to see if we can get her a certificate recognizing her from the city. And so as my colleagues mentioned, we were, and I looked at the SBCTA website, they are saying that they are spending $103 million on our interchange project. And so I don't know if any of you have noticed a little bit of construction going on at the interchange, but it is in full force. And there are a lot of changes that they are going to be making. They are supposed to be improvements, and we're widening the bridge, we're lengthening the bridge, we're improving the on and off ramps, we're changing the configuration a little bit on Barton Road. But $103 million, and this actually came through local funding for Measure I, but also we ended up with SBCTA finding federal funding for this project because the state of California actually withheld their funding. It was during a time of the budget shortfall that they were having. And so our SBCTA board knew how important this interchange was, and they made sure that we had funding to move it forward. And so when you're thinking about how inconvenient it is, I'm going to ask you to please know that it's not going to be forever. It should be an improvement. If you encounter things like timing of lights or some other difficulties, if we can get that message to the public outreach people for the project and get them to talk to the contractors and maybe to alleviate some of the problems that you're having. But please bear with us through this time because it will get better. And this is a substantial investment that was, they're recognizing our city as being important for this investment. So I just ask for your patience during this time. And I'll end with that and move on to public hearing. Item number 6 is a public hearing, and this is a prioritization of community development block grant funds for program year 2018-19. So to speak during this public hearing, if you would please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the city clerk. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to address the city council. If you challenge in court any action taken concerning a public hearing item, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in the notice or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. As we progress, we will open the public hearing. We will ask if there is any written communication to be reviewed. The city council will ask questions of staff, or they'll have an opportunity to ask questions of staff after a brief staff report. We will hear applicants' comments. They will not be limited to 3 minutes. We will hear any oral, well, it says favor or opposition, but we'll allow speakers to come up and talk about what they're for or against as we progress through this, and they will be limited to 3 minutes. The applicants will have an opportunity for rebuttal if necessary. Public hearing will be closed, and on city council will have deliberation towards a motion. So at this time, I will open the public hearing, and I will ask if there is a staff report.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As indicated by the mayor, this is a public hearing. My name is Sandra Molina. I'm the Planning and Development Services Director for the city. So this item is consistent with our vision statement regarding that we're a place where residents can enjoy the quality of life that fosters pride and an engaged community, and that the CDBG program funds community programs that benefit Grand Terrace residents. So the Community Development Block Grant Program is a federally funded program, and it can be used to fund activities that benefit low to moderate income persons, eliminate blight, or meet an urgent need. There's a maximum of 4 public service projects that can be funded with the allocation. Our expected allocation today, or excuse me, this year, is approximately $45,000. That's approximately $2,000 less than last year. But we do have $35,000 in unprogrammed funds that can be used towards construction projects. So in November of last year, staff did come before the City Council and advise the Council that the application period for submitting CDBG applications had opened, and we came to the Council to provide some direction on with regard to the types of applications or projects the Council would like us to pursue. At that time, we indicated that we weren't going to submit an enhanced code enforcement program, and the Council was fine with that. We did receive direction to continue to apply for the senior center position, as we did last year. And then also with regard to the unprogrammed funds, the Council had suggested that we look at accessible playground equipment, ADA improvements such as sidewalks or other type of ADA improvements, and then also whether the funds would fund ALPR cameras. And so with regard to accessible playground equipment, that was determined to be ineligible because it's equipment. The ALPR camera, same thing, ineligible because of equipment. And so we don't have those projects to present to the Council. With regard to the unprogrammed funds, because it's used towards construction projects, we did submit an application to use $13,000. And when I say we, I mean the city, to remove or replace the doors at the senior center to make them more accessible so they're a push button. What we found is that many of the seniors are having difficulty opening the door and then getting through the threshold before it closes on them. And this way it would be a push button, and it'll facilitate their access. As indicated, this is a notice public hearing. The applicants that are eligible for funding were notified of the hearing, and they are present. These are the applications that are eligible. Again, the City of Grand Terrace, the accessible doors. The Rec Center applied this for the 18-19 fiscal year to continue youth services. We applied for the senior center position. The library, again, applied for the literacy education program. And then Family Services Association applied for the senior meals. And the column to the very right identifies the amount that was being requested by those agencies. And so the slide provides the recommendations for funding that staff is proposing. The council since the council may make any changes it deems appropriate with regard to these recommendations. But what we would recommend as far as prioritization is to fully fund the county literacy program, the senior nutrition program, and then our third priority is the senior center coordinator. And the request is for $25,000, and the city is recommending $20,000 funding recommendation. With regard to the rec center, we are recommending the remainder, which is $48,76. And then we would also recommend the accessible doors, which is a different funding source. It's unprogrammed funds, and so that would not impact the $44,000 allocation. And so with that, I would conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to respond to any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Director Molina. Are there questions of staff at this time? All right. Seeing none, are there any of the applicants who would like to speak at this time?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Jennifer. I'm the founder of the Rec Center here in Grand Terrace. Rec Center started as just kind of a little idea in 2011-ish, and a group of citizens and residents of Grand Terrace came together and formed this nonprofit organization, formed the organization in record time in regards to the time that it takes to form a nonprofit, and up and ran with programs immediately. This is ran on volunteer basis. Myself and the board are all volunteers, not paid. We have one part-time staff that is partly funded by the CalWorks program through the city of San Bernardino College. And this program funding is recommended for Grand Terrace. As everybody knows, it's very steep real estate prices here in Grand Terrace, and it's very hard for us to find a location. We did have a location that we outgrew very quickly, and just a huge blessing of Azure Hills that has brought us in. However, we are charged lease. So the funds that are being requested would cover the year's worth of lease. Without it, we do not have any other means except for fundraising and the use of our board to do that additional fundraising. So last year we did, because of some structure changes organizationally, we missed the cutoff and we could not request CDBG in time. So this year we come before you and just ask for your consideration for funding of this. Again, the amount requested was solely for facility in Grand Terrace, no program funds other than that, and without it, there would be no other funds allocated for our lease purposes. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mrs. Ariza. Any other applicants who'd like to speak during this time? All right, no takers. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak during this time? Is it Granger? Is that your last name?
I'm sorry?
Granger?
Nope.
I have Michelle Granger.
That's me. Oh, okay, sorry.
We'll get to you next. I didn't think your last name was Granger.
Honorable Mayor, members, City Council, and staff, my name is Michelle Granger, and I'm the Food Service Director for Family Services Association Senior Nutrition Program. We're the ones that provide the senior lunches at your center and for the homebound seniors in your area. Last year, we served on an annual basis in Grand Terrace over 8,000 meals to over 170 unduplicated seniors. This year, we're on pace to serve over 10,000 meals and connecting with over 180 unduplicated clients. The City of Grand Terrace is now partnering with FSA through a separate agency program to run the day-to-day operations of the Senior Center. This synergy and diversity of program services allows FSA to stretch our funding dollars further. We achieve some cost-saving benefits when we have multiple programs at one site. This is becoming more important as the growth and demand for our meal program services is pacing ahead of our funding for this fiscal year and for the future. We have requested support for the 2018-2019 fiscal year for Grand Terrace in the amount of $10,000. Based on our current cost, $10,000 will support 1,100 meals for the fiscal years. We greatly appreciate your past support for our program and hope you'll consider approving our request for funding. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the program.
All right. Thank you for being here, Ms. Granger.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Marty, did you want to come back? If you would, please state your name for the record.
Good evening. I'm up, all right. Good evening, Marty Montes, 11852 Mount Vernon Avenue, number 332. Nice to see you all again. Familiar faces. I'm here on behalf of the Rec Center, and I'd like to give my support. It is a great program. They offer a wide variety of after-school services. My daughter, 7-year-old, she attends both the after-school program and art classes, and she's also attended the summer program as well. So it's a great program. It offers us working parents an avenue so our children. Okay. It offers a great avenue for them to interact with other kids. It also offers us options as far as summer and after-school programming. So again, I'm here supporting Ms. Jennifer, and her staff are really great. I'm sure you guys know, as you've attended some of their events as well, I recall. So again, just giving my support. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Montes. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at this time? All right, seeing no takers, I will close that portion of our public hearing, and I don't think we need an applicant rebuttal because there was just positive things said. So we will close the public hearing, and I'll bring it back to the council for deliberations and consideration of a motion. Councilmember Hussey.
I just want to make a comment for the rec center. And if Mr. Duffy, if they know about the community benefit fund, that you guys can apply for that to help offset some of the cost. That's right. So we have, the city of Grand Terrace has a community benefit fund. I know you guys really, we're probably going to grant a small amount compared to what you want it, but also helps offset the cost throughout the year. So you're more welcome to apply for that. I don't know if you guys have in the past, not, but just inform you about that again. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Any other deliberation, or is there an opportunity for somebody to make a motion at this time?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe I heard Ms. Ariza indicate that the amount recommended would pay the lease at Azure Hills Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I just want to confirm that sometimes the amounts that are recommended are so small that they can't be adequately used. But if my understanding is correct of her statement, I just want that clarification.
The amount requested would have covered the lease for the year. The amount recommended will not cover the lease for the year.
But you will be able to use it if the council approves, you'll be able to use it for lease payments?
We would probably have to seek other options or lessen our days offered. Right now, we offer classes at Azure Hills in 4 different classrooms. Tuesdays and Thursdays are the only options that we have, and that runs us a little over $1,000 a month. So the funds being requested would cover that. Therefore, the amount being recommended would not cover it, would not meet the terms of the lease.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, if you will accept that, I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
All right. I have a motion by Councilmember Henderson. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Robles. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously with council members Henderson, Hussey, and Wilson voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Robles voting yes, and Mayor McNamara voting yes.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to new business. We have item number 7, request by a member of the City Council to revisit the rezoning of 45 acres. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As indicated by the mayor, this is a new business item. Just to give some background, on January 23rd of this year, the council did consider proposed ordinance within this area that's being discussed this evening to establish an Ag 2 overlay district over the existing M2 zoning. The proposal would have allowed, as a primary use, commercial agricultural related uses with secondary residential uses. The minimum lot size, approximately 1 acre. At the conclusion of that public hearing, a motion was made to introduce the ordinance. However, there was no second made, and so the proposal did not move forward. Subsequent to that meeting, the city manager's office received a rezoning request from 3 property owners, and that request is to rezone the subject area from M2 to RA1-40, to create an M2 overlay district, and also to revise the floodplain boundaries. This was also received by the City Council, and a council member felt that this issue was unresolved and directed the city manager to bring this request forward before the City Council. And so this request by the 3 residents would require the council to provide that direction to the staff, and then also there would be costs associated with regard to the analysis that would need to be done. I should note that the previous exercise, there was a cost proposal from a consultant, and that cost was approximately $14,000 to date on that. But this chart here on the screen identifies the type of changes that were needed under the proposed Ag 2 overlay district that was recommended and the proposal to do the rezoning. And so the proposal, in comparison, both needed a zoning map change. The proposal would require the zoning map change to create the new residential district and to adjust the floodplain overlay. There would also need to be a zoning code amendment, and that's the textual changes to establish the standards for the proposed zone district and also for the M2 overlay district. The general plan land use map did not require amendment under the proposal that the council considered, but this new proposal would require the general plan land use category to be amended and also the text of the general plan to be amended. The CEQA analysis would need to be done. An addendum was proposed under the previous proposal. If this request were to move forward, then staff and the consultant would go back and determine whether the addendum is still the appropriate CEQA documentation to prepare or not. When a general plan is done, under state law, Native American consultation is required, and so we would be required to consult with the Native Americans, and that's a 90-day time period that we're required by law to give them. With regard to the Planning Commission public hearings, this would be a new proposal that would require public hearings before both the Planning Commission and the City Council, and so the purpose of this chart is to provide the council the process that would be required under the rezoning request that was received. With regard to the existing residential uses, this chart here has 3 columns: existing zoning, under the proposed Ag 2 overlay, and then under the zoning request. And so under the existing zoning and the proposed Ag 2 overlay, the occupied houses have non-conforming status with regard to being residential uses, being allowed to continue in an M2 zone district. And under the proposed zoning, the nonconformity would go away and all residential uses would be permitted. The note here would be that the municipal code was amended that allows the occupied residential uses to be expanded and reconstructed if they were to be damaged. The existing residential uses would fall under the agricultural overlay and can continue with animal keeping. CUP would be needed if there was a proposal to establish a commercial agricultural related business. And so that's the purpose of this slide. Also, with regard to the conditional use permit, under the Ag 2 overlay district, the proposal was to require a conditional use permit. So the table on the left is what the process is when a CUP comes in. It's received by the planning department, and it's reviewed for completeness, and it's sent to different reviewing agencies such as county fire or the water department. It's reviewed for CEQA compliance. Conditions are established that are in keeping with the project activities and impacts. It does require a public hearing before the Planning Commission. Commission will adopt a resolution, also adopting a CEQA determination and the conditions of approval. So that's the process of what happens. For a standard conditional use permit, all our fees in the Planning Department, well, the majority of them that have a public hearing associated with them are deposit-based to recoup the cost of processing applications. And so the land use entitlements for a CUP, standard CUP requiring a public hearing is $2,400. Engineering and building and safety also have a deposit that comes in to capture their review and the conditions that they would recommend. For a CEQA exemption, the fee is $283. If there's another level of review, then it's a CEQA initial study, and that's a different cost. Post-Planning Commission, all projects will then submit final plans that are reviewed for condition compliance, and they go to the different departments for review. That's also deposit-based, and that's approximately minimum deposit of $1,800. And so that's the process and the fees associated with the conditional use permit. This is for the initial public hearing use permit. There is an administrative level conditional use permit, and for minor changes that don't substantially change what was previously approved, that's the process for that. So for public correspondence, we did receive a letter from the property owner of 25 acres to the north that was provided to the council, and Mr. O'Brien is present as well as his representative, and they do not support the rezoning that's before the council this evening. So with regard to the recommended options that the council could consider this evening, we've presented three, and one would be to direct staff to renotice the Ag 2 overlay district that was presented to the city council. We would renotice it for city council public hearing. The second option would be to direct staff to rezone the project area as residential agricultural with the M2 overlay district, which is what was presented to the council by the residents. And the third option is to take no action with regard to the request. And so that concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Director Molina. Are there questions of staff at this time? Councilmember Hussey.
How much would it cost to do number two? We're going to pay additional costs for this study?
Yes.
We already paid for the first one, taxpayers did.
Yes, there was yes, that is true. We were expended costs for the first proposal. If the council were to direct staff to move forward with option 2 that's listed here, we would get a new cost proposal from the consultant. There is the potential for some cost saving if some of the product can be reused, but there would be an additional cost.
All right. Now you said that you had representatives here that have a property too that don't want to change the zoning, they want to stay at the ag overlay, correct? Or they want to keep their property, because I think last time we talked about we had a sale of a property.
Yes, so the acreage that's on the northerly portion, the new owner is present. They do not support the residential agricultural zoning that was requested by the council. They did support the previous Ag 2 overlay district, which maintains the M2 zoning, primary zoning. But they are present this evening.
Okay. And if we went back to last week, if we did the Ag 2 overlay, the 2 residents that are grandfathered in, they would have no problems if their family wants to sell their house, or they could still stay the same. There's nothing, they don't need a conditional permit use or anything like that, or?
The existing residential uses are allowed to remain, to be expanded and to be reconstructed, but they are legal non-conforming, and so what that means is they have to remain continuously occupied. Once they are unoccupied for over 180 days, that's when the nonconformity kicks in.
Well, let's say that they decide the family wants to sell and it's going to take an extra 180 days. I mean, can we get, because that's the thing I don't really like is we're forcing these people, because it might take longer to sell 180 days if the family members have to take over on that and try to sell something. I think if they're grandfathered in, they should be, grandfathered in as far as just leaving the property. If the family wants to keep it vacant and just have, keep their horses or something on there, they should be able to do that. Is there a way to take away that 180 days restriction on those 2, the grandfathered in? And then with that note, Mr. McConnell's property,
Mr. Hussey?
Yes.
I think city manager wanted to address that last
Okay,
time.
I'm sorry.
Yes, for the record, G. Harold Duffy, the city manager. So we have to really look at how we determine what the occupancy is. If the water is still on and the energy is still on, and there's somebody who's coming by the house on a regular basis and that's their primary residence, that the house has not been vacated. So if someone's selling the house and the house is if no one's actually living there every single day of the week, that does not necessarily mean that house is vacant. If the house is vacant where the energy is turned off and becomes unoccupied, that's where you start the clock. So selling a house where you're still the owner, that's perfectly fine, and we can certainly work that out to ensure that we don't say that a house is vacant because someone's trying to sell it. What we mean is the property's been vacated, there's nobody taking care of the property, and that's when we say that the house has been vacated for over 180 days.
Okay. Well, then I got a question regarding Mr. McConnell's property, because that's been vacant, and I know the state has a housing shortage, and is there any way possible, say, if we don't grandfather Mr. McConnell's property, that he could bring it up to standards so he could actually live in that house, live in that place of residence, and then have his agriculture? Is there any?
So currently, under the existing conditions, that house cannot be occupied. But if the council were to pass the Ag 2 overlay, he would then be able to occupy the house by establishing an ag-related business. And so he would be, once he establishes the ag-related business, he has full rights to occupy the residence through the conditional use permit program.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I've had to spend a lot of time today and yesterday reconstructing this entire project, and that's why I was busy, because I went to look for minutes, and we didn't have minutes for a good number of last year, and I didn't have the time to dig around for it. And I'm going to say, and we've said before, a number of us on the council, that these staff reports I should be able to find in the staff report, for example, the history of the actions we took, and it's not there. So I'm going to try my best to recap, and I think it's important because this is, emotional for a lot of people, including myself. So, we had, my object was to create a green zone, and with the recognition that the city in 1984 said, well, this we think is going to be good for industrial uses, and we have not achieved any industrial uses. But, staff has made me understand that once we did M2 in 1984, we provided some stakes, property rights that these M2 people have. So I wanted to better protect the existing property owners who have a rural-type residential uses. And so we proceeded that way, that we were going to protect the existing users and have a better formal understanding of what the highest and best use is that would accommodate our current vision. And I thought the current vision was that that's one spot of the city of Grand Terrace that should remain rural. So there was a discussion, I believe in November, about the cost would be $8,000. I was being sensitive to concerns about the staff that foregoing fees from residents for the study impacts their revenue. So I had been approached, because I've been attending some Environmental Protection Agency conferences, that they had grants to provide green zones because that reduces emissions. So then I was told by the city manager we were not going to go that route because we wanted to do it faster. And so it came to the full council, because I was uncomfortable unless it had council buy-in about expending any money out of our own treasury on this. And as a side note, we didn't go any faster. So then I thought that we were given some study parameters and cost estimates of more than $25,000. And I just can't find any minutes where we said something different than studying residential agriculture uses. And we have to understand, we're not the planning commission, and we're lay people, we're not planners. So when I say to staff, I'm looking for residential zoning, I guess I'm wondering why we ended up with an agricultural zoning overlay. And we all expressed concerns of protecting the proper rights of both parties. So I don't understand why we didn't do, I guess the correct term, spot zoning. To me, it was split zoning. You had M2 on one side and residential agriculture on the other. The other thing I don't understand is why we didn't consider flipping the burden of where both property rights were protected, but the overlay was reversed. And it was clear in, I believe it was November, the city manager said anybody who had been vacant in their property for 180 days would have to use their own money to resume occupancy of the home. So I thought that was clear. But I kind of feel this entire study was predicted on some flawed premises. The goal was to study the area that was going to protect the residential rural uses and would not have any effect on the current property owners in their home. But now I'm finding out, and I can't find it in the staff report, that in 2010, because in 1984 documents were lost, that the two property owners that are not Jeff McConnell had some strong protections to stay in their home. So then I guess I wonder, from a city council perspective, and for me, why did we proceed even down this road at all, if the end result's going to be what we had essentially already? And one of my concerns was, we had an application that came on appeal to us for a sizable two-story home in this area. And the city manager had talked to me, and there was some feeling that this was not what we wanted in our community. And the mayor, and I'm not saying the mayor initiated, the mayor, I think with the city manager's request, they had a community meeting to discuss this project. And I kind of got my back up on it because this was going to come to the city council in the very near future. And the policy that I have from the League of Cities and everywhere else, if something's going to be discussed at a imminent future meeting, you don't have community meetings on it.
Can I make a clarification there, Member Tim? It was not going to come to the council. It was a planning commission decision, and the community members wanted to meet. And then because of that meeting, it was brought to the council.
Oh, okay,
as
so
an
at that
appeal.
time it wasn't, okay.
It was brought to the council as an appeal.
Okay, and then, so it did come as an appeal. And I was also going to say, the mayor didn't express any position also at that meeting. She didn't go in there with, this is, so, and I couldn't support it because this is what all my peers have been saying. There are property rights for the people who have M2, there's property rights for the people who have the rural housing, and blah, blah, blah. Yet, it came to appeal because people didn't want to recognize this guy. He had the correct zoning. There was nothing to prevent him preventing that two-story home. So, so I guess what, again, I have also been told that I have to be careful that there's nuances that maybe perhaps this is going to just affect one particular property owner that doesn't want to pay fees. So what I have to say is I have to have an honest effort from both sides, from myself, from the residents and staff, to craft the best compromise without prejudice. And it's very difficult for me when there's some pretty strongly expressed dislikes for some of the people in this process. And I just have to say in closing that I hope the endeavors of this study were fair and not calibrated to induce any hardships on anybody. And that's all I have to say.
All right, I think that there were some questions that Mayor Pro Tem had. Does staff want to address those?
Would the Mayor Pro Tem mind identifying the questions that I should respond to?
Okay, the first one is, why was the premise, or how did you arrive that it should be, the recommendation to be the AG zoning and not the residential RA 140 when we were studying it? Because the residents have a letter in here, January 29th, saying they want an RA1. I thought I was articulating an RA1, and we ended up with an AG, what's it called? AG2.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Initially, when this item came forward to the council, there was that discussion, but at the very first meeting, property owners came forward and said that they wanted to retain their M2 zoning. The direction from the city council was that to have residential agricultural uses, and it was going to be to create these 41-acre ranchettes for agricultural uses. So as we looked at the issue in terms of both property owners or multiple property owners wanting to retain their rights, one being the M2 zoning and one being the ag uses, and we weighed what the council direction that we received was to create residential agricultural uses, these 1-acre area ranchettes. So the ag 2 zoning that you have does exactly that, but it requires a commercial component, which is an ag use, to be able to have the residential uses. And so one, we were preserving the property owners of the 25 acres, or actually more than, I think, 2/3 of the property owners out there were not in favor of an M2 zoning. And so we were...
You want to restate that? They weren't in favor of...
They were not in favor of the ag, all ag zoning, I'm sorry. And so what we tried to do was to ensure that we could meet the council's goals, was allowing the 40-acre area, 1-acre area, minimum 1-acre area ranchettes, but yet still preserve the ability of the M2 property owners to move forward with any potential projects. And so that was the initial component. So we thought that we had crafted a way to be able to allow the council to achieve their goals, under the understanding that there were some property owners with the M2 zoning that felt their property had value at the M2 zoning. And so what we wanted to do was, we also believed that those property owners would be willing to sell to agricultural if we could find someone who wanted to ensure that they receive the proceeds out of their property. So as we move forward with the workshops and we move forward with the Planning Commission, the staff's overall goal was to be able to protect both property owner types' property rights, but then still achieve the goal of the council to allow the 1 acre area ranchettes. And so we believe that that's what we presented to the council.
Yeah, and I guess there were other options to doing that, weren't there? Were there not? I mean, you could have M2 zoning, and you could have RA1 zoning.
You could have split the zoning, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's not the only option.
Well, it wasn't the only option. You're absolutely right. But when the item was presented to the council, there was this desire to create a greenbelt overlay for the entire area, and that's what we're trying to achieve. I think there might have been some discussion or comments even from during the process of potentially doing a split zoning, but we believe the recommendation that we had with the overlay, it accomplished that. It accomplished the ability to have ag, and it accomplished the ability to have M2.
Yeah, because it seems, seeing the presentation tonight, we're just trying to avoid a general plan amendment.
I think it's more than that, because I think that the discussion includes the other property owners and their willingness to make that change as well.
Yeah, but they would, if everybody kept their own zoning, I don't know how anybody's impacted.
But that wouldn't be what is before us tonight. It would be to change all of the zoning. That is what the residents who wrote the letter said. They want to change the zoning of all of it. So no, they're not even suggesting split zoning at this point.
Okay.
So my understanding is it's the whole area Ag 2 overlay, it's the whole area M2 overlay, or it stays as it is. Did you get all your questions answered, though? Okay. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When this item came before the council 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I made a motion that would, if had been approved, would have approved the Planning Commission recommendation on this issue, because I thought the Planning Commission did an excellent job successfully cutting Solomon's baby in half, so to speak. We subsequently received a new proposal or new application. And I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Robles' concerns and comments about trying to remove any acrimony from this process. And I support that. My comments that I'm about to make have no regard to who the applicant is. Doesn't really matter to me. What matters is the proper implementation of the City of Grand Terrace general plan and zoning ordinance. I wasn't here when this matter first came before the council, but knowing what I know now, I would likely have voted against it because I don't believe it should have qualified for a council-initiated zone change in the first place. Because I believe that the reason for that request was to avoid paying the application fees associated with a general plan amendment zone change. Anyone else in this community, any property owner or developer who submits a general plan amendment zone change is going to have to pay for that process, pay for the staff time associated with it. When the council initiates it, of course, there is no payment. So we have a situation where upwards of $20,000 has been spent that cannot be recovered on a project that is yet to see come to fruition. If you take the the proponent's proposal at face value, at least another $20,000 is going to be spent on something that is opposed by the majority property owner. in the area. Now, we've had council members not support projects with respect to the dog park for $11,000. And that's not the purpose of calling out those council members. I'm just trying to place this in proper context. This is a project that protects, by municipal code, two of the property owners and their legal nonconforming uses. I will tell you that in my years of experience, I've never seen a more all-encompassing protection of legal nonconforming uses. Typically, you can't do anything. You can't expand. You can't rebuild. If you incur damage and you cross the substantial rehabilitation threshold, which is different from city to city, and typically that's 25% to 50% of fair market value of the dwelling unit, you won't be allowed to improve or to fix the damage incurred. The two property owners in question are protected by the code with an action taken by the council in 2010. The proposal that came before the council or planning commission, the one that we discussed, was ranchettes, which were to be an ancillary use, and commercial agriculture was to be the primary use. That's not the proposal that we received over the last week or so. As I indicated 3 weeks ago, it's a property rights issue. And you have a situation, let me back up just for a sec. Typically, when someone submits a general plan amendment zone change on property they do not own, they have the written permission of the property owner to submit that general plan amendment zone change on their behalf, or any other development application. I can't submit an application on the mayor's property without the mayor's permission, even if I want to put a petting zoo where her dwelling unit now sits. So why would the council favorably consider a situation where the majority property owners oppose this and all they want to do is maintain their existing zoning, which the Planning Commission recommendation from 3 weeks ago would have allowed to occur? But that motion died for lack of a second. The proposal that's been submitted to the council and staff, I feel, is presumptuous, and I'll tell you why. It completely circumscribes the role of staff, the Planning Commission, and the City Council. There's a proposal submitted, there's language submitted, and the city is supposed to consult with the applicant if there are any suggested changes to the language. That's not the way the process works, ladies and gentlemen. You submit an application to the city. The staff is duty-bound to analyze that application in conjunction with the existing general plan and the existing zoning ordinance. And before the council could act on it, it must first be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So I'll conclude by saying this. I'm generally opposed to what's being proposed. However, if the council wants to have the Planning Commission have the matter that we that we considered 3 weeks ago remanded back to the Planning Commission for further consideration, I may be able to support that. But based upon what I understand of a constantly evolving proposal, I don't even support the action of remanding it back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Any other questions of staff at this time? All right. Oh, Councilmember Wilson.
When we're considering these items in relation to history and so on, which really doesn't make any difference at this point, I would just like to point out that there was no one on this dais that was involved in the 1984 hijack of the zoning to begin with. And I call it a hijack because at the time they were agricultural uses, and it was plain they were agricultural uses, And for a purported concept of the so-called flood control situation, so far as a 1-foot inundation of a portion of the lots, that became the justification apparently to change the zoning from an ag or a residential type of zoning to an M2. What we're really looking at here is, on this day, today, regardless of any of the historical evidence, is the good of the community. This body has the opportunity and the obligation to look after the good of the community, regardless of any of the rest of the procedural stuff that we have to go through to make sure that that happens. So I would support, further action on this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So this is a difficult thing because I had the lens of, we have at least 2 existing property owners without knowledge of the 2010 adjustments for them, that the city used its power to go and rezone, and nothing has changed. Now, the issue becomes, if I were a judge, it'd be like, well, one property owner that purchased the property knowing full well that was, for 180 days it was vacant, and they're not part of any 2010 consideration, wasn't harmed by us. Only the 2 continuous residents from 1984 kind of have any, were affected by our zoning change. So where I'm leaning is, but before I move on, but I guess what my question is, we could have protected the property rights of both parties using a different way of zoning. So either we remand it back to the city council, to the planning commission to have a look over, was this the only option? Or we make the decision here today that one property owner was not affected by any zoning changes, and what I hear is that the process is if someone wants a general plan amendment, they bear the cost. So essentially, we have one person that was never affected by any zoning actions we took that now owns property. So if they want a general plan amendment, we went as far as we should go, and they should pay for the general plan amendment.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Robles. I think that summarizes part of the issue at hand. In my mind, the question is the propriety of, that's the wrong word. The question is, we've expended a significant amount of money already that we cannot recover. And to my mind, there's one beneficiary in this whole discussion because 2 of the property owners have been protected since 2010. And the beneficiary, or the would-be beneficiary, purchased a dwelling that was legal non-conforming. The person had to or should have known that it was legal non-conforming. And the action being proposed is for the city to solve that problem on behalf of that beneficiary. And I oppose that by principle and philosophically.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mayor. Just so as I told the people that presented the report, is that that we are staff to the policy makers, and so we didn't look at this issue from a staff perspective of any applicant. We looked at it from the council's point of view. We were given very clear direction to create an area to have 1-acre area ranchettes. And the feeling that I got from the council was that that was the best use for that particular area. It was to create this greenbelt area, to be able to take us out to the Santa Ana River trails. So that's the report that we drafted in terms of the Ag 2 overlay. That was going to allow us to be able to market the area based upon the city had zoned this area as a greenbelt area to be able to do Ag 2 overlay for ag-related ranchettes. And so it wasn't we knew who the players were, but it was the concept that we got from the council that ended up with the report that you presented. And under that report, anyone who has a property that cannot be occupied, if the council passes the Ag 2 overlay, they will be able to have a process to be able to occupy that property. And that was the overall goal, to develop a process to allow all the current properties to be occupied and to hopefully create an area where ranchettes could be built in that particular area. That's from the staff point of view. I made a point talking with the applicants that I made it very clear my direction to the staff, so much so that when we couldn't get a phone call or reach the applicants, I directed the planning director to go out to the site, to knock on the door, to ensure that the applicants were not going to say that they were not notified of the meeting, to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to voice their concerns. But what we presented to the council in the Ag 2 overlay was what we thought was the highest and best use at the direction of the council for the ag area ranchettes. That was our overall goal. And so I think that we created that avenue. And if the council passes that particular program, you are giving an avenue for the current property owner to go through the process to occupy that dwelling.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so for clarification then, under the old zoning, this person didn't even have an avenue or a process to apply for occupying absent of a general plan amendment?
That is correct.
So this is a very fair thing then that the city's done?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will say that based on the discussions that we had, I thought the Ag 2 zoning accomplished everybody's goals. And to my dismay, there was nobody that was in support of it. So that is why I didn't second the motion that was made. As far as I was concerned at this point, we may as well leave it. And it's unfortunate that we spent the money to, I thought, address everybody's needs and keep the majority landowners whole with the zoning that they preferred as well. But they were in support of the Ag 2. They said we can live with that. And yet, when it came down to the time to actually have a vote on it, it seemed that, the applicant ended up being the city, but nobody wanted it, so why do it? Councilmember Hussey.
So let me just sum this up, my understanding. And one thing, I don't believe on big government step on, property owners' toes. I want to keep it, if a property owner wants to keep his property commercial and that's what he bought it for, I don't know if any commercial is going to go in there. We shouldn't be because that's what happened in 1984. The city came in there and took away the property owner's rights, and they were pretty upset. So if we take away the other property owner's rights, I'm sure they're going to be pretty upset. Another thing that I'd like to, that I'm hearing is that the two original owners, that they're pretty much grandfathered in. They could go ahead and live their life the way they want on there. They could raise their chickens, cows, grow vegetables, and they also, if they ever want to sell their property, there'd be no problem selling it as long as there's electricity or something, if that's to go over 180 days on the escrow. The other one is the other owner who bought the property. We did give him, and Mr. Duffy said, with the other way, he couldn't have a chance to develop his property, but since the taxpayers paid for this, now he has a chance to pay a portion of the fee to develop his property, correct? So basically, we're taking care of everybody's property rights in that area with the Ag 2 overlay.
That's correct.
All right. We'll open it up for public comment at this time. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this item? Thank you. We'll start with Janice Makshinoff.
Hi, Janice Makshinoff. I live at 21816 Vivienda here in Grand Terrace. My property is M2 with an ag overlay, but I'm also legal nonconforming. I have various animals for pleasure and consumption. If I don't have a certain animal on my property for 180 days, I lose my grandfather. Example, why doesn't this work? I have a calf for a year to a year and a half. I may not need to raise another one for over a year. Under the overlay, I would have to get another counter approval or a conditional use permit to raise another steer and repeat with each one. To do something we have done for years and at the discretion of one person who may not know anything about animal husbandry. My property is bought and paid for, and we wish for it to remain in the family as a home base for our 6 daughters. But family will be family, and the ranch could be empty until it's worked out. After 180 days, no one could live there. Now our family ranch is in the same predicament as Jeffrey McConnell's farm. Janet Rich, Jeffrey McConnell, and myself had a meeting at City Hall with Mr. Duffy and Sandra Molina on January 29th. I was asked by Mr. Duffy what was my reason for wanting the zone change and not the overlay. I would have to say this is a good one, but not the only one. Thank God nothing had happened during the years the overlay had disappeared. We would have lost our home. We would have not been able to rebuild. If you look at the proposed overlay, not one thing is allowed. The permitted uses, which none are listed, and states that they're temporary uses, is at the discretion of one person. Everything you would normally do in an ag zoning requires a conditional use permit, which is temporary. Since the zone changed 34 years ago, nothing has developed, except for one home no longer is a home. I think it's paying the price for a bad decision made 34 years ago. We have wasted enough time and money of city staff over development in the area. It is just not feasible to develop. Our little northwest side neighborhood is close-knit, and we have proven to stand together and fight any development that would affect our property values, our health, or our quality of life. My request is that it becomes residential agricultural with an M2 overlay. No mandatory commercial aspect. List of allowed uses normally found in ag zonings. No fees or approvals. Allow all buildings to be grandfathered in for their original use. Janet and myself do not lose our grandfather clause and continue our use as it was before. Residential ag was what Jeffrey, Katie, and myself requested almost a year and a half ago. How did things get so twisted?
Thank you, Ms. Makshinoff.
Okay.
I do have your letter, and we have read it. I appreciate your time here. We're going to move on to Janet Rich.
My name is Janet Rich. I live at 11701 Terrace Avenue. I am one of the property owners of 45 acres. I've had my property since 1960. I've lived in the home since 1967. It has been nothing but battles about this area. We were promised in 1984, when they did the zone change, which everybody down there fought, that, oh, we would be okay. We'll give you an agricultural overlay. We could still have all our animals and everything. So that was fine. But then all of a sudden, we find out somebody dropped off the ag overlay. And somebody in the city. I realize you guys weren't there then, but still. They dropped off the overlay with no notification or anything. No one could tell us when or who did it, but if our household had burned down at that time, we would not have been allowed to rebuild. So it took Janice and I over a year of meetings in 2010 to get our grandfather ag overlay back on. Now you want to give us an Ag 2 overlay. I don't want to mess with it anymore. I don't want the Ag 2 overlay. I also don't want to have to deal with the conditional use permits. I want the RA 1-40. I also want to keep my grandfather clause. I don't completely trust the city because I have been misled and lied to before. This would not be costing the city any more time or money if they would have listened to us when we requested over a year ago the RA 1-40. But they didn't do it. They came up with this Ag 2. I also want all the buildings and structures to be grandfathered in as original use was intended. If you want an overlay on something, let it be the M2 overlay. That way, if in another 34 years, it still hasn't been developed like the last 34 years, it won't be affecting us as much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. Next speaker is Katie Guthrie Mahaney.
Hello, I'm Katie Guthrie. I live right above the properties. So I live at 21769 Vivienda Avenue. And as a person living in the neighborhood, I would really love to see as residential agricultural with an M2 overlay, because I'm tired of fighting the industry that wants to come into our neighborhood. It takes away the joy of living there when you're constantly fighting manhole covers and things of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie.
You know what Katie said.
Thank you, Mr. Mahaney. Next speaker is Scott Heil.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. My name is Scott Heil. I am here on behalf of the Davis Family Trust, the owner of 4.5 acres of property in the affected area, or at least the area that would be affected if one of these zoning proposals moves forward. As has been said repeatedly, this property has been zoned M2 for almost 34 years, or 33 plus. And the Davis Family Trust bought this property 14 years ago in reliance on that M2 zoning. We believed then, and we believe now, that there is value in this property at the M2 zoning. We've worked steadily on figuring out ways to develop this property consistent with that M2 zoning. And when this issue came up, in terms of rezoning or allowing residential uses in the area, we were interested in being good neighbors to the folks around. So we didn't oppose the idea of the Ag 2 overlay, which would allow residential under certain circumstances. We appreciate the hard work that staff did in trying to thread that needle to allow the continued M2 zoning uses, but also to allow some of the ag uses, or excuse me, some of the residential uses that some property owners wanted to add. However, rezoning the property to the RA 1-40 would destroy the expectations, or the settled expectations, that we had in purchasing this property and in the efforts that we've undergone over the years to try to develop this property, again, consistent with the M2 zoning. So for that reason, we do oppose the rezoning in the RA 1-40 configuration, and certainly the expenditure of additional money for that. We don't oppose, we don't really take a position regarding the Ag 2 overlay. And frankly, if the council wishes to leave it as is, that's consistent with what we've been attempting to do in terms of developing the property all along. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Our next speaker is Ann Wade Hornsby, and I believe this is the item that you wanted to speak on.
Good evening, Council. I live at 22594 Eaton Drive in Grand Terrace, but I am down in that area that's being discussed quite a bit. And I have been here many, many, many times and spoken about the fact that I personally support the second choice because historically, the people that live in the area right now are the one most affected by the zoning in the first place. Never has industry really been there because every time it comes up and you discuss the highest and best use of the property, all the people gather and give their opinions, and so nothing has happened. Actually, there'll probably be another 34 years before people decide to build 1 acre sites where there's railroads, small tiny roads, lots of electrical lines overhead, and a floodplain. I don't know about that. But I know that having people have to pay a conditional use permit for agriculture in an agriculturally zoned area at the moment that even has an agricultural overlay has never made sense to me. And it doesn't matter who's involved. Historically, you've allowed people to continue living as if it were RA. I mean, that's what's been being done even since 1984. And I don't understand what the problem is rezoning it, since it was sort of just done with, as Ms. Robles said, she couldn't even find a record of how that 1984 decision was made. And yet, Janice and the other people involved had to fight until 2010 to be able to get their homes to where they didn't have to worry about losing it if it lost its zoning after 180 days. And if I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but this has been such a rambling process to understand why the zoning is something that we have to come and address over and over and over again, when simply switching it from being M2 with an agricultural overlay to RA with an M2 overlay, so that if industry ever does go in and they need to pay conditional use permits, perhaps that could be done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hornsby. Our next speaker is Jennifer Rebs.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rebs. I live at 22135 DeBerry Street. First of all, I'd like to address the City Council and ask for and tell you that I am very sorry for my comment last time at the City Council. It was inappropriate, and I can tell you all care very much about this problem, and you have tried to work very hard on it, so I thank you for that. I think it's very sad. Besides Janet, I'm not sure about all of you. I have lived here a very long, long time, and my family has, since the early 70s. I am in tremendous support of the original owners, Janet and Janice. They are the ones most affected, and us original people in Grand Terrace. I can't imagine how this travesty ever happened, that M2 ever got passed. If any of you, and I know you have because I hear your comments on it, have been down there, walked down there, it's totally ridiculous how it could have ever got passed. So the travesty is the original error, and I've heard that brought up. Now, can we fix it? No. We've spent tons and tons of money, time, energy. Every time I get a text, oh, we got a council meeting. I am wholly committed to this because I wasn't as a child. And this is very sad. People, unless you are filthy rich, could never do what is being asked by the CPU and that of these properties. It's ridiculous. And not to mention, if anybody cares about the environment, I've told you so many times, wholeheartedly, animals live down there. We have peace, we have red-tailed hawks, we have coyotes, we have the bike trail, we have the Santa Ana River. This is one of the few precious areas left. We can't even climb Blue Mountain. I lived riding my horses on Blue Mountains through the orange groves to the dump. So please, please, and by the way, thank you, Bill, personally, Sylvia, Doug, you're amazing people. I'm so thankful and grateful for your input and everything that's been said tonight. I feel proud of the people that have been elected. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ribbs. Are there any other requests to speak forms? I thought I saw some. Next speaker is Dave Milanarski.
Milanarski, that's a mouthful. Happy pre-Valentine's Day, everybody. David Milanarski, 41.
I said I was reading, this is terrible of me, but I was reading about in the Polish folks, and I don't even know if you're Polish.
I am.
On Fat Tuesday, they eat pushkas.
Yes.
And I said, do you have any?
We'll talk after. We'll talk
expecting a gift
afterwards.
to be brought? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, my goodness. Sorry.
Please continue.
You're so kind to recognize my heritage. I appreciate that. David Molnarski, 413 McKay Drive, San Bernardino, California. I'm here this evening with Patrick and Michelle O'Brien, who are property owners in the area. They've submitted a letter on behalf of their support for the either the Ag 2 overlay or no action. We really respect property rights of the people who have lived here for many years, and we just want to indicate our support for the Ag 2 overlay, and please allow them to have their residents and their animals and other uses of the property. We're here to answer any questions. I filled out a slip for Mr. O'Brien as well. If you have any questions for him, he'd be happy to answer those, but we don't need to repeat the testimony. We're here in support of the Ag 2 and the letter that was submitted. So,
Thank you.
thank you
Mr.
very
Mul-
much. Thank you.
Milanarski. I am going to call Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Patrick O'Brien, please, is the last speaker slip I have.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Any questions or just?
Will you tell me a little bit about it? You just purchased this land.
Yeah, actually, it's been a couple of year project. It's taken a long time. Started the project 7 years ago, working with the previous owners, and been working on it to get it to this point, with plans of doing something down there that works with the current zoning and the residents as well. As some of you know, we're local here as well. We own a couple of local businesses, Fiesta Village and SoCal Custom. We do commercial, everybody knows Fiesta Village, so that's pretty easy. The commercial kitchen construction is what we do as well. So we work with many of the vendors here in town, Updog and Command Bearing and so on. And then, of course, we eat here and shop here as well, bank with both banks. So we do support staff on the ag overlay, and we would like to keep the M1 zoning the way it is, or M2 zoning the way it is. Any specific questions from anybody?
No, thank you for being here tonight, Mr.
Thank you.
O'Brien.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Any other requests to speak forms? BK Forbes.
She moved. She was up there.
Good evening, Bobby Forbes, 11850 Burns Avenue, Grand Terrace. I live near this property. I still maintain, if you're going to let houses go down there, please make the lots be big enough so that they are true ranchettes, and if people are going to have animals, they can legally have the animals. If you have them be an acre or less, there's not room to have an animal there with the proper housing, and all it's going to become is dirt bike trails for those little motorized toys that the kids have. They're going to go round and round and round and round. There's going to be dirt all up here at Katie's house, my house, Becky's house. That's what it's going to be. That's what happened in High Grove when they gave them those half-acre lots, because they're not big enough to have animals. People tried to have horses over there 20 years ago. The lots are not large enough to accommodate the structure for the animal other than a dog or a cat, a farm animal, with their proximity to the houses where the people live. So the lots have to be bigger than an acre or a half acre if you're going to allow ranchettes down there. It doesn't matter if there's power lines, it doesn't matter if there's railroad tracks, we all live there. There's a buyer for everything, there's a tenant for everything, it doesn't matter. Somebody will live there if it's built. But it needs to be built in a manner to have it be the right way for what they're asking, for it to be a ranchette or a farm. Just because you give somebody a lot of dirt doesn't mean they're going to grow vegetables on it. And you don't need an acre and a half or 2 acres to grow vegetables, but you need it for the animals, I believe, in order for it to properly be able to house those animals. I don't care about any of the other stuff. It's just if you're going to let houses go, make it be the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Any other speakers at this time?
And this is, I have a 2-hour timer on my bladder.
Want to take a break?
No, please continue, Mr. McConnell.
Okay. I gave something to the clerk to read. It's a copy of the petition that was never ever included in any of your packages for over a year and 3 months. Okay, November 2016, 3 property owners came there because I requested this RA1-40. Because, as Mr. Henderson says, 1 or 2 or 3 people cannot request a zone change for other people who may not want it. So that's why we chose that route. We wouldn't have spent all this money if we had stuck with this original proposal before the Planning Commission, and they never got this proposal before the Planning Commission. And how come they didn't come up with other options, as Mrs. Sylvia says, including the option of, consulting could have come up with also the M2 overlay. With the M2 overlay and the RA140 underneath, everybody still has their zoning. So this new proposal took all that into account that, okay, nobody loses their zoning, as the original proposal said. So option number 2 satisfies a lot of those arguments. So nobody's losing their zoning. They still have their M2 overlay, and everybody still can do what they want. As staff says with their proposal, this idea satisfies everybody's concerns. So the petition. Okay, so this isn't really about 2 people against 2 out-of-town investors against 3 property owners down there. It's basically against 2 out-of-town investors against a good chunk of Grand Terrace. As you can remember from July, the petition I submitted, I'm up to over 300 signatures that want to see an ag overlay or a 40-acre green zone down there. And from in the packet also I showed well over all the Facebook likes, well over 1,000. That we, the people, enjoy this and want this. This is, like Mr. Wilson's saying, is a quality of life issue, and your vision statement also says that this supports quality of life. So, and this also solves the problem from 1984 that these three property owners were, against their will, zoning was taken away from them. So, yes, they have an overlay. Yes, they have a grandfather, but they still don't feel safe with it. So this option 2 solves the problems. So for the past year, I can't read my notes. So anyway, this proposal basically solves what most of we the people want. And most of we the people want a green zone down there. Please read this. I don't have time to read the whole thing right in front of you, but it's signed by I got over 300 signatures that we the people
Thank you, Mr.
want
O'Connell.
a green zone down there. So please tonight, choose option 2, go back to the Planning Commission or resolve it with something. Just resolve it, please. Thank you.
Mr. McConnell. All right, are there any more requests to speak at this time? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close public comment. And if we can wrap it up in 5 minutes, we'll bring it back to council for their comments. Otherwise, we'll go on a little bit of a break. Well, we're bringing it back to council, so are we set to go forward with a direction here, or are we going to deliberate for another hour?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we direct staff to rezone the project area as residential agricultural with an M2 overlay district.
Okay, I'm not hearing a second. Are there any alternative motions at this time? All right, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess for the property owners that are in the M2, and staff could answer this, what are the impacts to them if we did a split zoning? Or if we went the residential? It sounds like there's an impact if we go residential to them.
So the first scenario is a split zoning. I'm assuming north and south. If the residential was on the south portion and you kept the M2 on the north, first of all, Mr. Davis's representative, who's on the south side, is not in support of the residential zoning either. So you would be looking at just a small pocket of residential zoning surrounded by M2 zoning. But the impact would be that the burden would be on the M2 zoning to make sure that they properly design their property to not impact adjacent residential uses. So that's a design consideration. The other alternative that Mayor Pro Tem is asking, I believe, has to do with going all residential, which the property owners of the majority of the land area are opposed to.
I got a little confused right there.
Okay.
So this opens up, because it's been said to me that, if M2 starts developing, we're going to make sure we mitigate any adverse effects to the residential people. Yet, in our planning policy, maybe, if they're residential, then the M2 people know that they have to plan for impacts to the residential. And then the other was some of the folks that own property in 84 are concerned about conditional use permits being onerous on them every time they want to do something a little different.
Mayor, staff can clarify those comments regarding the conditional use permit and the requirement of the uses.
So regarding the existing residential uses that are currently occupied, under the existing zoning, they're non-conforming and there's provisions in place to allow them to reconstruct or rebuild or expand. Under the proposed Ag 2 overlay zoning, that consideration does not go away. And they would be allowed to continue to operate under the existing ag overlay, and they can continue with the animal keeping that they're having. And so the example was if I have a calf for my own purpose, and then I don't have that calf anymore, do I need a CUP to replace it? And it's no. You would continue to operate under the existing animal keeping provisions that you have. The CUP would be needed to establish a commercial agricultural use, and so at such time as the existing residential uses down there want to establish a commercial ag use, then that CUP comes into play.
So just to repeat that, is that if they're currently operating on an ag residential platform, until they change over to ask for a ag-related business use, then they would require a CUP. If they're keeping animals now, if they're keeping a cow and they're slaughtering the cow, they can still do that under the Ag 2 overlay. There's no CUP required. The CUP is required when they establish a commercial-related, ag-related business. That's when the CUP comes in. So if they're slaughtering an animal for personal use right now, they can still do that under the Ag 2 overlay. There is not they don't lose that if they get an ag overlay. The ag overlay CUP is based upon when an existing occupant out there decides to open up a commercial ag-related business, then they would apply for a CUP.
So, for example, if one property owner wanted to do an organic farm, under this, they would have to apply for a conditional use permit.
So if they wanted to do an organic farm right now, that's a business. They would have to get the proper business licenses to do that.
So they could do that with the existing zoning? An ag-related business at this point, could that be done with the existing zoning?
They would have to, as a business, they would have to get a business license.
Yeah, but what about the zoning?
Okay.
So the ag overlay allows level of industry, it allows agricultural and nursery supportive uses. So that would be considered under those provisions. The one thing to always keep in mind, or try to keep in mind, is that there's still that floodplain overlay district on the property. That does also play into future uses. But with regard to existing residential uses, they can continue to operate as they've been operating under the existing Ag 2 overlay.
And so just one's an observation and the other's a question. But it seems like an observation to me that in 1984, absent the 2010 grandfather enhanced protections, we kind of did an inverse condemnation of that property. I mean, if these folks' property would have been damaged in a fire, they would have lost all their insurance would have to have covered, but they didn't have the right to rebuild. So I guess what my thing is that we do things that adversely affect property owners.
Well, it has been done in the past, yes.
So I guess my question is for the people with the M2 is how do we, if we were to proceed with the residential, I can't remember these acronyms, RA1, how that adversely affects any plans they have?
Shall we have a property owner?
Are you asking the property owner to step up? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good evening again. David Molnarski. With regard to Mr. O'Brien's property, it has virtually no impact to us if the southerly portion of the study area is converted or changed to some sort of residential. Development of any kind within the M2 zone would require a CUP. We'd have to come in front of your planning commission. We'd have to come up with design standards and remedies for whatever type of interfacing to any adjacent property. I mean, one of our neighbors is Southern California Edison Company, who owns about 7 acres just to the north of the residential area. So they have provisions that they would have to address if they were trying to do something on their property. I think they're an industrial use. I mean, they're a true industrial use, even though we're a public utility. So we have no issue with the residential consideration. Our whole purpose here was to allow the overlay onto the M2 for the ag purposes in case somebody wanted to do something in the future if that property ever became available. So we were trying to be accommodating to both the residents and to the city staff.
I think the question was if the change is made so that the M2 is the overlay and the underlying is residential agricultural, how does that change your property value?
I misunderstood. Well, being an ex-city planner myself, I really don't think that that's the proper technique in dealing with land use issues. The property is currently zoned in general plan for industrial use. To make a change, you would have to go through some sort of a process and address a number of different issues. As the one gentleman, Mr. Davis, indicated, They bought their property because of the M2 zoning. Mr. O'Brien bought his property because of the M2 zoning. We wouldn't want to see it changed, just like some of the residents indicated back in 1984. They didn't like seeing their property rezoned either, because it does present, I think, a series of obstacles when you start dealing with primary uses versus overlays or ancillary uses. So we like the fact that the M2 zone has a whole host of primary uses, and that should be the driving force behind any review of any application. Ancillary uses are supposed to be secondary or minor to the primary use. So I think it's a convoluted way of dealing with a land use issue, quite frankly.
All right, thank you for your
I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry I didn't get it the first time, so thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to belabor this this issue, but it's still not clear to me whose ox is being gored if the Planning Commission recommendation had been approved by the City Council. 2 property owners are protected and have been protected since 2010. You have an Ag 2 overlay that was a proposal that would allow all of the uses that are being discussed here. The issue is whether it's by right of zone or whether it's a CUP. If my colleagues read the Planning Commission minutes that were contained in tonight's agenda, you'll see the problems, even with the CUP, the city has encountered with a tire manufacturer or disposer. It is, even with the conditions of approval, it's been difficult to gain compliance. And I will tell you from experience that animal keeping and some of the issues that are being proposed as right of zone, it may sound good today in 2018 with these property owners. But down the road, when someone brings in 50 cows instead of 4 because it's by right of zone, and the city is forced to try to effect some kind of compliance with the development standards, it becomes a 20-year war. And it just soaks up very, very limited staffing and enforcement resources. And I don't think we want to go there. Secondly, we already took action in 2010. And this is more or less a tail wagging the dog kind of situation. So if we upend our general plan and zoning code for this particular request, what do we do to the next one? What kind of precedent are we setting? If someone comes in and says, well, I don't want to pay the fees associated with this, I want you to initiate a general plan amendment zone change on my behalf. It doesn't matter whether I'm a resident of the city of Grand Terrace or whether I'm quote unquote an outsider. You're a property owner with property owner rights. And it's this, at its core, this is a fairness issue. And no one has told me why it's okay to infringe upon the rights of the industrial land users, but so long as we have appropriate unregulated agricultural land use uses. It fails that test, the basic test of fairness. And this council, in my view, is obligated to implement the general plan and the zoning code in as fair a manner as possible. And this is what I thought the Planning Commission had accomplished in its extensive deliberations on this issue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson.
Oh.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So let me just tell you, I haven't had a good experience being born and raised in San Bernardino with general plans. Because what I realized in my younger years was that the city of San Bernardino didn't update the general plan every 10 years like they were supposed to. And so I started noticing that everything had to be done outside that process, and that I felt was corrupt. So I guess my question next is, I'm understanding that this general plan
and done correctly and ethically is something that should be adhered to. And I'm thinking that, when is it, 2020, that we're going to be looking at it again? So I'm understanding better my peers' sentiments, because I didn't sit on a planning commission, and I was never a planner or a city manager. So this has been an arduous process for me to try to go through and get, where I'm comfortable in making a decision that I feel is fair. So knowing that this is the best compromise that that the planning commission deliberated on, and leaving the general plan sacrosanct, then I feel that I have to lean to going with the planning commission's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hussey.
My concern, like I said earlier, is for all the property owners, and I want to make sure these two property owners are taken care of. I don't want to see them pay any extra for a CUP, anything like that. We have to make it right for a wrong that was brought back in '84. So I'm hoping if we do pass this.
Can we address that issue about them having to have a CUP? I believe that was answered,
Yeah.
that they do not need to.
They do not need one. So I just want to make sure that they know, and if they ever had any problems, they know they could come up to us. But I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem on the Ag 2 overlay. I think it'd be best for all owners of that property.
All right, is there a motion that someone would like to make?
I just want clarification because, as Mr. Duffy properly indicated to council, this is a new project. And so the Planning Commission recommendation died for lack of a second. So procedurally, maybe the city attorney.
Mr. Duffy?
Yeah.
Now, with option one, I believe is what you're talking about, with the Planning Commission recommendation, Planning Commission has already studied it. So if you wanted that option, tonight what you would do is ask the staff to go ahead and renotice it for the city council and just bring you back to where you were in January.
All right.
I'll move the item to number 1, to direct staff to schedule a public hearing to move forward with the January 23rd, 2018 proposal to create an AG2 overlay district.
Second.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Councilmember Hussey. Please vote.
Motion passes with council members Henderson and Hussey voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Robles voting yes, Mayor McNamara voting yes, Councilmember Wilson voting no.
All right. Thank you very much. And we are in recess for 7 minutes. We are on packet page 267, but item 8 on our agenda, general municipal election consolidated, November 6, 2018, timetable.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Deborah Thomas, City Clerk. Tonight you have a receive and file item regarding the general municipal election consolidated November 6, 2018 timetable. On January 23rd, Mayor Pro Tem Robles had just made a request to give council a timeline on the upcoming general election for this year. What I prepared for you was just a lot of items that are up and coming, but I highlighted in bold, italics, and with the yellow highlighter, just really the items that you as council members or candidates, it would really affect and the timeline that you're going to need to complete these items. A handful of them are resolutions that you'll handle here at council meeting. The others, I think the largest one is your 3-week filing period as candidates. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'm ready whenever you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, because this used to be posted on the website, and some people who wanted to run for office would complain that they showed up the day after, or they didn't know the process, so we want to make sure it's posted so it's fair to people.
Oh, certainly. I can have all the information posted to you. Once we call the election, usually around the end of May, beginning of June, we'll go ahead and have a lot of the timeline and a lot of the information that residents who wish to run, they'll have that available to them.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? All right. Anyone in the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing no takers, I'll close this item, and it is a receive and file, so we'll move to item 9, which is approval of Housing Successor Agency subordination policy.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Cynthia Fortune, Assistant City Manager. This staff report supports our mission to preserve and protect our community and its exceptional quality of life through thoughtful planning within the constraints of fiscally responsible government. The staff report for consideration is for the City Council to adopt a resolution approving a subordination policy for the current outstanding loans administered by the Housing Successor Agency. So prior to redevelopment dissolution, the Community Redevelopment Agency of City Grand Terrace, through its low to moderate income housing fund, offered first-time homebuyer loans to the community with the intent to aid lower-income families purchase their first homes. As we all are aware, RDA was closed on January 31st, 2012. So listed on packet page 270 of your report are the list of outstanding loans that gives you the original amount of the loan, date that the loan was granted and issued, the purpose for it, and what the loan balance is. Now, these are seconds on the loan. They're often referred to as silent seconds. So this is if a person would come and want to apply for a home, they would come to our then RDA, and if they qualified as a first-time home buyer, the city would allow them the loan off the second. There is no interest. There is no interest, and it is not due and payable only until they refinance the house or they sell the house. And as you can see with this list, these homes were purchased quite a few years back, and loan balance is still what the original loan amount was when they took their second. So staff had actually got a couple of requests from some of these homeowners requesting if they could refinance their first mortgage, not ours. And when they do that, the title comes up that we have a lien on the property. So we tried to research, and we didn't see any policy as far as subordination. Now, when I talked to one of the homeowners, she had said that her intent was not to get any cash in the home, All she wanted was to refinance her first one because there were lower interest rates. There used to be 2 incomes. They now are only 1, and so the refinance was to help her. So I called several cities. I actually solicited to see if there were any subordination policies that were out there. And I did requests from all the surrounding cities. The city of Rialto answered back, and they sent me a copy of their policy. Other cities up north, further than our, allow several times to allow refinance. Rialto saying if they were to allow this, they thought it best to only allow it once. So again, the subordination policy that we have submitted for your review, again, is to allow that homeowner to refinance their first mortgage, not to get any cash back. Any increase will only cover the cost of the closing costs of the loan. It doesn't provide for cash out. They're refinancing the first mortgage. They continue to stay in the home. This will still be their primary home. And as I stated, that new loan amount, if it were to increase, is only to cover any closing costs. And like I stated earlier, the reasons that were given to me when one of the homeowners called was that they had a reduction in their household income. And if this was something that we could reconsider, since we did not have a policy, city manager thought that we would bring it to city council for your consideration. There is no fiscal impact to adopting the resolution approving the proposed housing successor subordination policy provided in the packet. That concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions City Council, the Housing Successor Agency may have.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Fortune. I have one question. These were 30-year mortgages?
Their primary mortgage, that would be the assumption I would make.
And so when they refinance, they will be refinancing for an additional 30 years, even though many of them are coming up on being halfway through their 30-year mortgage.
That is possible.
Okay, so they would. Did any of the other jurisdictions have any kind of a condition on length of time of mortgage if they're going to refinance?
You know, when I called the state and inquired about that too, we didn't discuss length of mortgage. However, I did have the city attorney review one of the promissory notes with the deeds of trust. It actually stated, and Mr. Adams can correct me, that should they do decide to sell their home within first 15 years, the requirements, the RDA requirements at the time, that it be sold to another first-time home buyer.
Mm. And so that might follow with a refinancing then?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
That might follow with a refinancing. If they have another 30 years, then in the first 15 years, they would have to sell it to another first-time home buyer?
I'm not sure about that. I can find out for you. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Councilmember Hussey and then Henderson.
I think you asked, one of them was, how do they pay back this second, they sell the house and then automatically comes to the city, the RDA money? Is that what it goes to?
It will come to the Housing Successor Agency. Yeah.
Right. And if they stay in the house for how many, 30 years, then that's a wash, or is it, how many years?
There is no clause, so the loan is due and payable when they sell or refinance.
Whenever they sell or refinance. So they don't have to have so many years and then the loan just disappears.
No, sir. Okay. However, some of them, as a city manager and I had researched, there is a rider to that promissory note. Should they decide to sell the home, the Housing Successor Agency participates in equity sharing. And the way these loans were written, each loan had a different percentage. So let's assume that the second that we had was $50,000 and the existing loan was $300,000. So total owed on the home is $350,000. if they sold a home for $500,000, of course, they would pay our $50,000, and that $150,000 equity that they earned over the loan, the city is entitled to a percentage of that share. As we reviewed these, the percentage were not equal. We saw one for 30%, one for 41%, and another one for 50%.
So do we have anybody who sold their homes and we didn't follow through on that?
On these, no. If anyone has sold their home in the city of Grand Terrace, since we don't have a lien or a title, no, the city has not been informed.
I mean, that's the first I heard it, because I know one that sold their home like 15 years ago. I don't know if they got the thing on it. But I was just wondering, curiosity.
Yes, and I asked the city attorney to weigh on that when he read the rider on the note. Yeah.
The question is, I'm sorry?
Well, that they sold their homes in the past prior, I mean, this is knowledge that just learned about, you know, the city gets a profit or 1%, whatever, on the equity of the house. Prior, did the city know about this same situation, like, say, 5, 10, 15 years ago? I mean, this is all new to me.
Well, I reviewed one document for one of the loans that was listed there, and it's my understanding they're the same. And so the second provides that if in the first 15 years that second is on there, if you were to sell it, you're required to sell it to another first-time home buyer. After that 15 years, then there is not that requirement. You could sell it on the open market. But when you sell it on the open market, what would happen is that you take the percentage of that silent second based on the price that it was originally purchased, and you divide the equity of the property between the successor agency at this point and the homeowner. And that stays, the document I read, forever. So whenever they finally sell it or it is going to be transferred, it will show up on title, and the city will not only get the loan back, the principal, but they will get a percentage of the equity that was made over all those years.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering if we did follow through on any houses that did sell like that.
Well, I don't know the history.
Okay, Mr. City Manager wants to comment on this, and then Mr. Henderson, I know you still have questions.
Yeah, and so tonight we're talking about the subordination policy, but what the Housing Successor Agency also did was they actually acquired a home and then actually had some residents actually pay a regular mortgage. And so I looked at some of the homes that were purchased outright by the city, where the city had the mortgage occur, and there wasn't this policy or this equity sharing agreement. So you'll find some cases where the city carried the entire note, and there was a payment that was, $900 for this particular property, and then you'll find that someone actually paid off the loan, but there wasn't a subordination policy on that. And so they just paid off the home as a regular mortgage, and there wasn't that rider that said, we're going to share this percentage. So it changes, and if you want to give me that information, I can check and see if that's one of those. But we went through these, and it's an interesting program.
Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple comments. I think Ms. Fortune, during her presentation, may have answered one of my questions, but a couple points I'd like to make, and maybe this will help the research. I've administered these programs over the course of my career. Sometimes the silent second, like is being discussed here, sometimes they've been amortized low-interest loans. With the use of redevelopment, low to moderate income housing funds, not only is there a requirement to sell to another first-time home buyer, but another low to moderate income first-time home buyer. That's where the rubber meets the road. When the home has increased in value over a significant period of time, then getting someone in the successive buyer in that home where they can qualify and manage the mortgage is the real, that's the real challenge. The other thing is, I don't know whether this agency did it or not, but what was common in the use of redevelopment and sometimes other funds like CDBG were the recordation of affordability covenants with respect to the homes. And the affordability covenants oftentimes were 30 to 35 years in place. And I mention that only because if you violate the affordability covenants, even now the state of California could make life difficult for the city of Grand Terrace or any agency that had a redevelopment agency and was not allowing the full implementation of the affordability covenants. Lastly, I think the promissory notes I'm used to seeing required repayment of the loan if there was a change in title or refinance. But the key is the change in title was whether it was voluntary or involuntary. So if someone had to declare bankruptcy for whatever reasons, the agency would still get repaid as part of the disposition of that property. And that's something that I think we need to take note of.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mayor, and one of the things I wanted to make sure that we don't lose sight of is that although the redevelopment agency is ended, the Housing Successor Agency is the body and can still do programs just like this. As a matter of fact, this $669,000 is only one of the assets that we have. We also, part of the property that we have with CHP DevCo, that development has property on there worth about $600,000. So when that property sells, that money will be coming back to the Housing Successor Agency. In addition to that, we are going to be receiving about $50,000 a year for the next 10 years for the Housing Successor Agency. So that's another whatever that $400,000, $500,000 number, that's going to be in the future. So we're looking for a policy on this program, but you're also going to be getting revenue in the future to address other affordable housing needs in the future.
Mayor, may I just add to Councilmember Henderson's comment? He is correct. The promissory notes do state that a refi, a change in title, or a sale makes the note due and payable. But as Mr. Duffy has mentioned, not every loan is the same. However this was managed, some had promissory notes, some didn't. Some, as he mentioned, RDA was the bank. RDA purchased a home and the homeowners were paying the RDA for their loan. So each loan is unique in itself.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Okay.
So I guess
Mayor Pro Tem.
what seems like we're doing here, because it seems like in 2000, somebody's financial situation could have changed considerably. And also what could have changed, what obviously changes considerably since 2000 and the housing crash, that we're up to the highest levels, in history. So I guess I'm wondering, does this weigh the go of that we provided first-time housing buyer assistance to people X number of years ago? So if they want to refinance, they only do it with the current mortgage, and it has to be to benefit some change in their circumstance, because we're not in the business of keeping people in a home forever, and they refinance and we never get any benefit of putting that property's value back to use. And it seems to me in the escrow, right, that if we had a lien, it would have to be extinguished. We would have constructive notice of it. So there shouldn't have been anything that
we didn't know about.
Yeah, went through.
Okay. All right. Are there any requests to speak on this item? Please remember to state your name for the record.
You sound better. I think you feel better. Bobby Forbes, 11850 Burns Avenue. Thank you. I'm probably the only person in the room, other than Doug, that was here when all that was happening. I sold a lot of those homes. I sold them to the city, and then I sold them to the people that bought them. And I cautiously say over a speakerphone that probably the variance in those notes was because a lot of city employees got those homes. That came to light later, and so I'll just leave it at that part on that, okay? But all of the people that I sold them to knew that if they refinanced or sold, that note had to get paid. So I don't think there should be a review. I think it should be, here's the way it is. There's enough equity in those homes now. They sold for $110,000, $125,000. Probably the highest one I sold was $132,000. I sold many of them. Those people, those homes are $300,000 now. The cheapest one's $300,000. The one on Mount Vernon would be that, you know, on a busier street. So there's no, I can't even imagine a reason that they couldn't go for the $23,000 that note was on the normal sales. I don't know about these other ones with the fluctuating rates or terms, but it bothers me to now hear that there was more than just the one that I knew about that had any kind of fluctuating purchasing power. I'm not sure what to say with that. So I think that they should have to pay it off if they're doing a refinance or a sale. That's what Bank of America would make them do. That's what anybody else would make them do. It's probably $14 more a month to pay off that little bit. It doesn't make sense to me to let that stay there. And I know there's people that become handicapped. There's people that lose their spouses. There's things that happen. But that's life. And, you know, that little bit shouldn't, I don't think it should be forgiven. I think it should be done the way that it was originally written. And these other ones probably should be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Are there any other requests to speak at this time? Okay, I'll bring it back to council for their statements, but I was around, a number of my neighbors' homes became first-time home buyer houses. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Forbes' recollection conforms with my experience. When I worked for the city of San Bernardino, we had an extensive program. It was self-funding because the refinances and the change in title through sales not only rebuilt the loan fund, but it paid for the administrative staff. And so the problems that maybe staff encountered in terms of some cities having a subordination policy and some not is because those cities that don't have a policy tried to make sure that the revolving loan fund was for the benefit of the entire community, and the more funds you could loan out, the better it would be, the better for your housing element, the better with dealing with state HCD. There was a whole lot of benefits for doing that. So, you know, without any further ado, I would tend to agree with Ms. Forbes in terms of the city requiring folks to pay off the silent second.
I know Mayor Pro Tem, it seems that you have another comment, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
In a refinancing that pays off the silent second, if there's a percentage of share for a sale, that stays with the loan? Or how does that become satisfied?
And maybe the city attorney wants to answer that, but our understanding is that it's all due and payable, the equity share and also the original investment.
Okay, so that changes the refinancing a little bit more than just paying off a silent second. Perhaps it could result in a higher amount per month. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, yeah, because when we had our Monday meeting, I expressed to you that if anybody's getting a refinancing, they need to extinguish their debt with us and everybody else. Because if I go to refinance my house, I got to pay off my mortgage. And if I had a second, I have to pay the first and the second. And some people had a third or whatever. So I'm wondering, what are we doing here?
So what you have before you is, because we have received over the last 6 months a number of requests to refinance these? And our answer has been no, there's no way to do that. And so we wanted to come to the council, and Cynthia did Ms. Fortune did the research to see how are the cities handling this. And so other cities have created a one-time program. And so before administratively, I just say the policy says no. I was going to come back to the council and see if one, you supported that policy, or do you wanted to modify that?
Well, yeah, because, you know, before I was on the council, there were some people sleuthing around, and it was verified to me that one of the employees didn't present in their documents to the city the employment of their spouse. So this has been, you know, sounds to me, with people more in the know, that there's been some problems with this administration of this thing to begin with. And for example, too, there have been people that have accepted low, moderate income support from us that have also been before us to say they don't want anybody else coming into the city if we were to create low to moderate income housing. So we have to go back what the goal was. The goal was to get first-time home buyers in, not to carry them for the rest of their lives, and that we need a policy that returns money back to the fund so we can continue to extend the benefit to low to moderate income housers.
There's no right or wrong, at least in my view, in terms of whether you subordinate or not. It depends on the goals, the long-term goals of the program. And whatever the council's decision, I think, just understand that if we don't subordinate, we'll get paid off, and we'll get money coming in addition to the money that Mr. Duffy has outlined. And if we are going to be required to put that money to use, and for laudable purposes. But I will tell you, it is a labor-intensive endeavor. It's not something that can be handled on an ad hoc basis by an existing staff person, in my view. So if the council is desirous of taking these additional resources and putting them back out into the community through loans or some other form of assistance, we should understand that there's more to that decision than just saying, let's do this.
Well, yeah.
And so that's not an argument for or against whether we adopt a subordination policy. It's just something that we need to be mindful of no matter what decision we make.
Councilmember Henderson, isn't it true, though, that the money that would be repaid from these silent seconds and the percentage share could go towards low-mod income housing projects to create a better quality project? It doesn't have to go back to a first-time home buyer.
Yes, ma'am. You could, if the city contracted, the Housing Successor Agency, or the city contracted with a housing developer and the city imposed a low to moderate income housing percentage. Just assume for the sake of discussion it was multifamily, and typically the percentage was 80% market, 20% low to moderate income. It would help the city meet that requirement without doing other things and requiring other sources. If a developer comes in and asks for a density bonus, the city is required to grant that bonus, either in some form of public assistance or the cash equivalent. We don't have any discretion there. So when you have a low to moderate income housing fund, it does help you address those inevitable density bonus requests.
Any other comments, or is there a motion to consider?
What does this do?
What does it do? I think it just came to us as something to review. I think it stands as is if we don't change it.
Okay.
What?
Yes, Mr. Duff.
And Ms. Fortune, please help me out if I get this wrong. What this policy does, it establishes a policy that would allow people to refinance their existing loan but take no cash out, but to refinance their existing loan one time. If the council does not approve this, then it's just an affirmation of the original documents where we say, no, it's due and payable. You cannot refinance these loans.
Okay.
So how do you make a motion to leave it as is?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, there's two ways you can do that. One is nobody brings a motion, and you move on to the next item.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to bring a motion at this time? All right. Seeing no takers, we will move on to item number 10. Thank you for that discussion. Item number 10 is award of professional services contract for final design of Commerce Way. Public Works Director, Alan French.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. Mayor Pro Tem Alan French, Public Works Director, here to present this item to you for the award of sole source contract with Webb and Associates for the final design of Commerce Way. This item supports the 2030 goal, number 2, to maintain public safety by investing in critical improvements, and goal number 4, to develop a successful partnership. Back in June, the city adopted the CP&A and allocated DIF funds for the extension of Commerce Way, for the design and construction of Commerce Way. At this time, the city is ready to move forward with the final engineering for the northern section of Commerce Way. Just so you know, on the map there, let's see, there it is. So this is the Lewis project here. The city's portion, the city's portion of Commerce Way would go from the existing end south to their north border, which would be here. So this segment of Commerce Way. And then Lewis, oh no, I'm sorry, that continues to this portion right here. So this is Lewis project. The darker green is their responsibility at this time. We would take the road from their end up to the existing end of Commerce. So that's the segment, that's the northern portion. So the city wishes to continue and finalize the design of Commerce at this time. They would provide engineering and design services and help with right-of-way plats and maps for acquisitions. At this time, staff is recommending the approval of the contract with Webb and for the authorization for the city manager to execute the agreement. For the recommendation under item number 3, the money has been appropriated previously, so that can be ignored at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Director French. Are there questions of staff? Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Wilson.
2 questions, Mr. French.
Sure.
I see that this is proposed as a single source. Justification being that you already have the first 35% programmed for Webb, so might as well take advantage of the, let's say, intelligence gathering and the preliminary design and then just continue from there. Did we contemplate any kind of, I guess, first of all, in our policy, is it normal for us to piecemeal this kind of a design?
It has happened in the past, and for this project, we had started out with the 35% to work with Webb. They are the designer for the southern section for the Lewis project. So they had some previously gathered data, and we utilized them to help us get that 35% done.
Is Webb here by any chance?
Yes, the representative is here
good,
from Webb.
Perfect.
Lynn McCaffrey.
Okay, then I'll hold the question for that person. And then any offset by developers? No, because this is our portion.
And on this, what it is, we're using our CP&A money which is a 60-40 match, and our 40% match, we are planning on using the DIF funds to cover that.
Gotcha. Okay. The only question I have then, and I guess I'll relate it to you, and that is this the team discount? Because it seems like $129,470 is a lot of money for the amount of stretch that we're doing. And with not having any advantage by having a perspective by going to other than single source, team discount?
I'm sure there's some discount in there on packet page 294 through 298 is the scope of the work that's planned. It does include drainage studies for our section, water quality management plan,
and also, I guess they're going to have the advantage of some join lines and things from the Lewis work that they are already doing?
That is correct.
Okay, good. So I guess I just want to hear that we're getting our very best deal.
Yes, Councilman.
Okay.
Okay. Did you have a question of consultant?
Sure. Thank you. Can the consultant come up and answer a couple of questions?
And please state your name for the record.
Name's Lynn McCaffrey with Albury Webb Associates, and I'm senior engineer for the transportation department.
A question I have is, we are moving away from single source situations and trying to move towards competitive analysis. You've got us over a barrel a little bit here because you're already doing stuff for Lewis, and that's a good thing in the long run. I just want to find out how I'm getting the team discount in relation to this for the city, because we want to make sure that we can get our very best buy, and we're not going out to a competitive bidder. So reassure me, would you?
In addition to the, we are combining the project with the Lewis, so you wouldn't have the separate consultants coming up with the plans doesn't match.
Including the drainage, yes.
Right. With the whole, we're looking at the whole picture to make sure it's continuing and work for the both specific plans and for the city portion. And also we are giving all of our city clients like a lower rate than the typical developer client. We're on the rate schedule 42 for the developers clients, and we're giving city 4 years ago our rate. So the city is getting the lower discounted rate for that. Also, our proposals, including the field topo, field survey, and the new area topo, and also including the traffic signals for the new intersection, and also include the Berry will realign to perpendicular to the Commerce, and also a new road from the Berry down to the property line of the specific plan.
Now, does this include any survey other than what you need to be able to do to be able to establish the design points?
Include the design survey, and also including the obtain the title report for the additional. There's 5 properties we need to get the title report. That will prepare the legals and plats.
And you do the title report,
right?
Okay,
right, and also prepare the temporary construction document, temporary construction easement document. We estimate about 5 on each side, so probably 10 documents. Also include the bid document and specifications and cost estimate. It's a whole package.
Very complete package. Thank you. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your cooperation.
Thank you for your time, Ms. McCaffrey.
And Mr. French, also, thank you for putting together a good consolidated package. This is the way things really work out nice.
Okay, you're welcome, Councilman.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. French,
Yes, sir.
This is a divided four-lane thoroughfare?
It is divided in the southern section. It starts out in the existing segment. I'm sure everybody's familiar. That is not divided. There will be some improvements in that area, but it will transition into a divided four-lane section for the remainder south.
Now, the divided four-lane section is Lewis's responsibility, or do we have any?
Some of our part from the existing line up here through, it'll transition into the divided part to this point, and then the Lewis will take over from there all the way down.
And the specifications for our four-lane divided will be the same specifications used by Lewis?
Yes, sir. We're actually hoping to get the packages done at the same time so we could bid all at one time.
Okay,
That's
thank
the
you.
goal.
Any other questions of staff? All right, seeing no more questions, I will open it up to public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak at this time? All right, seeing no takers, I will close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to motion approval of professional service agreement to be prepared and reviewed by the city's attorney's office between the City of Grand Terrace and Webb and Associates for the preparation of 100% plans and related documents and studies of Commerce Way, and authorize the city manager to execute the aforementioned agreement with Webb Associates in the amount of $129,470 for the final design of Commerce Way, and that's it? Okay.
All right, so that's your motion. Motion by Councilmember Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Councilmember Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously with Council Members Henderson, Hussey, and Wilson voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Robles voting yes, and Mayor McNabo voting yes.
All right, thank you. Move on to item 11, which is amendment to Section 24 Electronic Equipment Use Policy of the city's personnel rules and regulations. Assistant City Manager Cynthia Fortune.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. The staff report supports goal number 1, ensuring our fiscal viability by providing updated personal rules, regulations, and policies that are in compliance with state and federal mandates. Our personal rules and regulations, Section 24.9, actually have a cell phone policy. The current cell phone policy authorizes city-issued cell phones to employees on an as-needed basis. City has determined that the use of cell phones or smartphones contribute to the overall effectiveness of business communication and increases the safety of staff while away from their offices. As stated, cell phones are issued on an as-needed basis. What we're trying to avoid is to have staff carry 2 phones, a city-issued one and their own personal. So before you, as the table shown, packet page 303, we gave you the cost of an average monthly cost is about $59.50. If we were to buy phones for executive management and amortize that cost on top of the average monthly charge, the cost would roughly be about $74 a month. So our request is to provide the city manager authority in lieu of mandating his executive management they carry a city-issued cell phone, be allowed to offer them a stipend instead. So our recommendation is approve the resolution that will amend the cell phone policy to provide that option to the city manager. That concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions City Council may have.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Fortune. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I was just glancing because I imagine exempt staff would have to be making sure the communications also use their, just like we do, our city email to keep everything above board. We're not going any Hillary Clinton way that she couldn't carry 2 phones.
Well, they'd have to have their own server, though, too, if they were going to go that way.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of staff? All right, seeing none, is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Seeing no takers, I'll bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Henderson, second by Mayor Pro Tem Robles. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously with Council Members Henderson, Hussey, and Wilson voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem voting yes, and Mayor McNamara voting yes.
All right, thank you. Item 12 is proposal to reorganize code enforcement to include animal control services. Director Sandra Molina.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As indicated by the mayor, this is a discussion item this is an item proposing to reorganize our code enforcement division and to incorporate animal control services into the division. This item does support our goal number 1 to ensure fiscal viability. The reorganization of code enforcement to incorporate animal control services would result in a cost savings, and it also is a more fiscally viable option to pursue the service. To provide some background, the city contracts currently with the City of San Bernardino for animal control services at approximately $153,000 a year. We continually assess our services and our method to deliver those services to ensure that we're providing the best service at the most efficient cost. We've spoken with Loma Linda, who is a nearby city that has implemented this program with dual animal control and code compliance officers. And they've been doing this for about 3 to 4 years now, this type of dual service. They did create new positions for the reorganization that they did. We are proposing to do a similar reorganization to bring the animal control field services in-house. To give the council just a background and a comparison, or to provide some stats for the council, and I did want to also mention that the council did receive a 4-page letter from concerned residents, but we didn't get any information as who wrote that. But they asked some questions with regard to being able to have the capacity to bring this service in-house. And so what we are providing here are some statistical information for the last 2 calendar years. And what you'll see is that for the number of service calls that have been received by the City of San Bernardino, they average approximately 24 calls a month. And on this next slide here, this is the number of service hours that our vendor has provided in Grand Terrace over the last 2 calendar years, and that equates at an average of 11 hours per month. And there's some months that there were more hours, but on an average, it's 13 hours per month. And then with regard to stray dogs captured for the last 6 months of this fiscal year, we've had an average of about 4 animals per month. And I wanted to indicate that as I've been speaking to different cities and agencies regarding this proposal, when I spoke with one agency in particular, they indicated that they could serve, or the city could be served by a part-time officer, a field officer, rather than the services that we've been receiving full-time through the City of San Bernardino. So our proposal is to create a new dual positions, code enforcement animal control officer, and a second code enforcement animal control specialist. The animal control specialist would be a part-time position. The existing code enforcement officer and code enforcement specialist positions would be eliminated. Employees that are currently filling these positions have been offered the new positions that we're proposing to before the council this evening. Pay scales will stay comparable to existing pay scales. And the type of field duties would be addressing stray, injured, diseased, or aggressive or dead animals, handling barking complaints, and also there is the need for standby hours. That would be after-hour services. And as staff has been reaching out to different agencies to look at all the services or that would be needed in conjunction with bringing in the field services, we are providing some conservative estimates. We feel that as we better refine these numbers that we'll see some additional cost savings. But for instance, sheltering services, the city of San Bernardino has told us that they're looking to get out of animal sheltering services. And so we've been talking to different agencies. The city of Moreno Valley does not have capacity. Told the city or county of San Bernardino does not have capacity at their shelter. Riverside County does have capacity. And so we estimate sheltering services to be about $40,000 a year. Again, as we refine that, we will find that that number is going to come down based upon some discussions we're having with Riverside County. We will need to make provisions for emergency veterinary services, both daytime services and after-hour services. And so we'll reach out to veterinarians in town. We have the 24-hour emergency clinic, and so I have reached out to Dr. McDuffie with regard to his services for after-hours service, after hours. With regard to a vehicle, we are looking at amortizing over a 7-year period the cost of the vehicle, fuel, and replacement cost. So we're looking at like a mid-sized vehicle that would be equipped with the animal confinement containment areas, and also that has room for equipment and tools that the officers would use. With regard to training and equipment, we anticipate the first year cost of about $15,000. That would probably go down with subsequent years. But the first year, what we want to do if we move forward with this program is look at training services for our officers. And the National Animal Care and Control Association has some upcoming training, week-long trainings in April. And so we would want to position our officers so that they have the training that they would need to be able to perform the services that we're proposing to bring in-house. I am speaking with other agencies nearby to provide on-the-job training or provide ride-alongs where they would be able to ride with animal control officers, see situations that come up, and learn how to handle those type of situations. Because this is a new skill set, and there is going to be a need for the training and a need for understanding how field services are handled. Again, what's in our report is that we anticipate savings of approximately $30,000 a year, but as we move forward with this program, if the direction by the council is to move forward, we'll come back to the council with new job classifications and pay scales, but we'll also have more refinement as far as the costs that we would incur for sheltering, training, and vet services. And I believe that we're going to see that there'll be a greater cost savings. And so what we are asking the council to do this evening is to consider the proposal before them, including the dual positions, and to direct staff to move forward with that proposal. And with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Director Molina. I have a couple questions. I'll go back to your presentation where you were talking about one of the agencies you spoke with commenting that the city could be served with a part-time field officer. Would that reduce the cost to what we're paying in the current configuration of the services that we contract for?
If I'm understanding the question, if we were to ask a vendor for a part-time, okay, yes. Possibly, but I don't have that information. So
Okay,
right now.
So we haven't asked to renegotiate that portion of a contract that we've had?
No, ma'am, we have not.
Okay. What difficulties has Loma Linda had in their changing over to this type of a configuration with their code enforcement becoming animal control as well?
Well, we met with them a few times. The animal control code compliance officer was a new hire. And so in a sense, they started from scratch with an employee that came into the position knowing that it was the dual skills and requirement. They've indicated that there is a training period to become familiar with the laws of animal control. But they've been very positive with regard to providing the dual service They seem to have a very proactive position when it comes to the animal control. We felt that it was a very positive experience that they're having, and which
They didn't share any challenges that they had to overcome.
No, they didn't really have any, no. They just told us that it's now that it's a local service, that they felt that they were providing good service.
Okay.
And what they shared too, Mayor, was because of the size of the city of Loma Linda and having the local officer, they were actually able to mitigate some measures because they knew the city based upon the dual relationship, and they knew where the dogs belonged. So a lot of the calls where they were repeat calls, they were able to actually take the dog to the location and talk to the owner.
Right. So we received this 4-page letter, and I'm not advocating that we read it into the record, but I wanted to go to page 3. There's a nice little paragraph in here. It's the second paragraph on that page, and it starts with, "Take a look at our city." I want to read this for a couple of reasons. One, take a look at our city as one of the best cities in the Inland Empire. Why? Your code enforcement offices are everywhere. My friends and I have had a few of their tickets, but they were just doing their job. Grand Terrace has beautiful homes, clean streets, and clean businesses. We don't have hundreds of signs on the curbs or graffiti on the walls. Why would you ever think to add animal control to their plate? Now, first off, I read that because I know that our code enforcement officers don't generally get that glowing of a review, so I wanted to make sure that it was out there, and that clearly they are doing a good job. And so what this brings to mind, though, is does that make it more difficult for them to do the job that they're currently doing if we are adding these additional services?
One of the reasons why we provide the stats is that the staff report had over the first half of the fiscal year, which averaged to about 5 service hours a week. And in looking at, for the last 2 calendar years, we have 24 hours of service calls that are being handled by our vendor. And so that equates to approximately 5 to 6 hours a week. What's anticipated that as this program is implemented, that there may be a need to do some fine tuning. I mean, that's a new program. We're going to find that we're going to need to do that. But for the amount of hours that we are seeing statistically as far as the amount of time that will be taken from code enforcement, we don't anticipate a significant impact in our code enforcement services. There will need to be some adjustments, but I don't see a significant need.
And Mayor, just to kind of clarify that too, is that, and I wasn't sure about the question that you asked earlier regarding the one nearby community indicating that they felt that based upon our call volume, our sheltering services, that a part-time officer, that's it, can cover the needs of the city of Grand Terrace. The shelter numbers, the 13 hours in terms of the number of visits that San Bernardino has done. So put it in perspective, so for an average of 13 hours per month, we're paying San Bernardino about $11,000. And so we just believe that the capacity or the requirement can be molded into the existing code enforcement activities. And as Ms. Molina indicated, that as we move forward with the project, we certainly believe that when we fine-tune the numbers and come back to the council, the savings are going to be, we very conservatively now saying $30,000. And that number is going to go, I consider the number to go up considerably as we move forward with the project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What's being proposed, in my view, is fairly common. It's been successful in the communities that I'm familiar with. It also has happened at the firefighter level, where firefighters have been asked to take on code enforcement responsibilities. And there's always a little bit of apprehensiveness regarding that, but in the cities that I'm familiar with, it's been an effective option. In my view, the current contract, and full disclosure, that contract came up. I recommended approval to the council when I was sitting in Mr. Duffy's seat 3 years ago. So it seemed like a good idea at the time. But 3 years on, I think we could get a better bang for our buck. We're a city of only 3.6 square miles. I think that's real important to understand and appreciate with respect to any enforcement activity, including code enforcement. I could have used the code enforcement animal control officer this morning in my morning walk when I was getting waylaid by a stray dog. So to me, it bears worth consideration based upon the rationale and the documentation provided by staff. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, you know, I'm grafting your reports, and I'm wondering, okay, with that kind of volatility, how are you going to have an average workload? I don't see it. And what I'm sensitive to in this letter is, this city is small, and several years ago, the council said they did not need a city manager and assistant city manager, yet here we go again. We have both, and we're paying for it. So, and they talk about the furloughs, and then we're opening it up. So there's some actions that didn't take place, you know, when there was a fiscal crisis and we eliminated. But also, there was some strong discussion on this council, and it was pointed out to me, and I don't know if it's true, that we said that these positions were going to be evaluated in a year to see if you know, how they were presented is actually how things are working out. But the point is if we're going to be making a very fundamental change on this, and this is where I noticed, now I can't find it, where I don't understand why we have to reorganize two positions, code enforcement / animal control officer, code enforcement / animal control specialist. I don't understand why we can't have a part-time person doing the dog stuff, because I think it's substantially a different kind of position. And I'm concerned with the volatility of that. When these are peaking several months, that other things are going to fall away. And so it's a quality of life thing for me, for the citizens, and for myself in Grand Terrace, where I'd rather spend money on someone getting you know, I've said many times from here, dead animals never make it to disposal. They disappear on the road. We run over them enough times that they finally just dissipate. So I'm looking for a couple of things to come back. I'd like to see this tweaked with some of the comments I've made, and also we have a fire agency that's independent of us, but put our heads together with them on some things that they might be able to do. And I want to move a little bit slowly on this. I don't want to move fast.
Right. Any other comments? Councilmember Hussey.
You know, I remember when I first got on here and how much the cost was for animal control, and I was like, wow, I'm going to go get me a pickup and pick up my own dogs, and maybe me and Bobby Forbes can go in business or something, you know, because we get these dogs. But then one of my biggest things on the city email, constant, about San Bernardino Animal Shelter, the cruelty, the mismanagement, and so I heard nothing but good things for Riverside County. And I know we asked before, you know, can we do with Riverside County? And I know when I first moved here to Grand Terrace, Colton used to be our animal control officers. And I know they looked into it, and I think Colton wanted to pretty much have us pay for all their animal services at one time, because it was getting pretty expensive. But, you know, $153,000 annually and for 147 calls, I mean, that's over $1,000 a call. That's kind of crazy. Then, unfortunately, you know, I remember also back in the day, too, when you get a knock on the door and they would come by and make sure your animals had dog license. And part of the thing was when we got with San Bernardino doing this contract a couple of years ago that they were going to enforce the dog license, and I haven't seen one person pull over somebody walking a dog that doesn't have a license, because I see it all the time when I go for walks. Now, people don't realize, well, the cities, they're after us for money. No, the reason why we got dog license, one, to make sure that pet gets back to his family, but most of all, to make sure that the animal is vaccinated so nobody gets hurt, sick, or no other animals get sick, to control diseases. So when a pet owner doesn't have a dog license, I frown on, I consider them, not a very good pet owner. They're not taking care of their pet. They're not doing their due diligence by taking care of their pet, making sure their pet gets home. Now, I know the city has ways for different prices for people, if they can't afford to get their license, and, for seniors and stuff. And I even volunteered a couple of times if somebody can't afford it, I'll pay for the license. But I want the best service. I'm an animal lover. I want, I don't want my dog actually to go to a shelter that I read up on it every day, how they euthanize them or mismanage them or mistreat them. And I heard nothing but good things about Riverside. And my concern also, too, was, it was mentioned that we're 3.5 square miles. We also have a development over here in High Grove. I'm sure we're getting some of their pets from High Grove coming over here. I would like to get with Riverside County to help us, if we're taking care of their pets and picking their pets up, that we somehow they give a cost, or, they pay us to do it. Or, they give us a cheaper cost than the animal shelter. It's something to look into if we're going to look into all this stuff. As far as, code enforcement, I believe in the proper training. And I know code's busy, and, I'm concerned about, animal bites and how much, if we're going to get cost on more of our JPI insurance for animal bites, it might happen. But, I want the adequate training and the adequate equipment for them. But, I'm strongly for this, to get out of San Bernardino, to take care of our animals, to bring back the control for our city, and to enforce our dog license and pet license so animals can get back to their families. And also, like I said, the main thing is for getting their shots, make sure that if they're spaded, and then so we could control diseases. But that's just my comment.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Councilmember Wilson.
I'd just like to remind us on the dais, too, there's more to animal keeping than just dogs and cats.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a whole zoo out there, and, about the time somebody sneaks up on a snake, they're going to get a real education. I had a friend who was really good at this, and he considered himself one of those rough and tough wild guys, and even at that, it was quite a challenge. I know that there's some training that's programmed into this, but I think we have a whole underground here in this city, because of the kind of city it is, that tries to keep the animals out of the pen, so to speak, to try to keep them so that they're channeled back to owners that care about them, and they try to take care of them. I'm not 100% sure that we need this individual control. And the reason why I say that is because I think there's more liability attached than there is benefit to the community. I think the few times that our people are going to be handling situations, there's more threat of disadvantage than there is advantage to it. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. All right. Any other comments at this time or questions of staff? Okay. Hearing none, I will open the public hearing and ask for comments. And I believe that Mari Montes has gone home for the night. Please read for her then. All right.
I don't know where she lives.
Mhm.
You have
I know
you have
where
her
she
paperwork.
lives. Oh, I know where she lives.
Okay. So, number one, she opposes this. She has it up here with the title. Number two, 2006 to 2014, 7 years, commission, SBC plus AC. I don't really know what that means, but Colton, San Bernardino, 2 or more AC officers are on all the time in Colton. Yes, Colton and Grand Terrace, I'll add this. I remember when Colton and Grand Terrace was together, you saw the AC officer a lot in Grand Terrace, and they covered Colton. They had a good working relationship here, too. And in the very beginning, the animals went to Devore, then they ended up in San Bernardino, which we all know is a hellhole. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. It's a horrible place. I guess it's improved, but it's still a horrible place. So, number 3, she says, we need to keep an outside vendor. I can read that. And the city's limited resources, separate incidences of vicious dog attacks. That's a big liability for how to handle it. And I got this cold, so I just don't quite know how she's got it all put together. But hearings that come along with when you have incidences with animals, wild or domestic, you could end up in court. Who's going to take care of that? Who's going to fill that shoe that day that you have to be in court 3 times or 2 times or just 1 time? That's going to be time consuming. I hadn't even thought about that one. Animal control issues in addition to code enforcement. Concerns from public code enforcement not addressing concerns animal control would not allow and push back. So I think that means that there probably wasn't time in the day to do both. That's the way I understand that to be. You know, we have a small town and 2 code enforcement officers for this little town. They're busy all the time. And how would you add to their duties this? I can't even fathom that. So then she has another note on the back. What happens to the current positions if you're bringing in and you're adding an additional workload? Are you going to purchase, or are you going to hire a 3rd person? There's talk about part-time person now, but what happens if those people don't want to take on these services, or they can't accommodate the lifting or the emotional turmoil that comes with picking up dead animals off of the ground, or you have a fear of rattlesnakes or a fear of dogs in general, and you've taken this job to be your code enforcement officer that has nothing to do with animals, and all of a sudden this is being added to your plate. Do you quit? Do you get fired? Do you get unemployment? Do you lose your pension? What happens to you? So I think that's our number 8. And how long training can be immediate, dangerous situation, vicious animals, animals on busy streets and traffic. So I guess the type of training that you get, some of it, you have to be a special person to be an animal control officer. You can't just be a regular desk person and then go out and work the streets with animals.
30 seconds.
So, okay, so that's that one. And then she has, in her notes under fiscal impact, would only save $34,000 to $54,000 per year to eliminate this program. And is that worth eliminating for the liability that would be and taken on? Let me see, I'm sorry, one more thing. She has to go to bed. That's the last note, I'm sorry. So I don't know that I made enough sense of her notes, but at least I had the opportunity to read them.
Okay, so that was Ms. Montez's testimony, and I see that you have a request to speak up here.
Sure.
Bobby Forbes, would you like to
Yes, please.
state your case?
Bobby Forbes, 11850 Burns Avenue. First of all, I have never sent a letter to the council members before. They all came back except for the mayor's today. So I wonder why that is, because I got on the website and got the email addresses, and everyone came back except for yours.
And I didn't see your email.
But I didn't get a response saying, I didn't get a rejection or a return on yours, but it might have come back and I just missed it. So I contacted Deborah this afternoon, and she was kind enough to let me submit this to her, and then I believe they put it in your packets. May I read this? Is that going to take too long? Because the public won't know how I feel about this. Is it okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is addressed to the council. I feel this would be a very sad move by the city to add to the workload of our 7-day-a-week code enforcement employees. There's a lot more to the AC officer's job than just picking up a dog or a cat from someone that is called to have it picked up and take it down to the shelter because they didn't want to. Consider doing a ride-along with the animal control officer that on a daily basis deals with injured animals, domestic and wild, the removal of dead animals, domestic and wild, stray animals. Some are friendly and cooperative in being loaded to a truck by a stranger, but most are not. They have to physically pick up healthy, injured, and dead animals on a daily basis. Injured animals are often taken to the vet before they are taken to the shelter. An example would be an animal hit by a car that survived. It then goes to the vet. The vet determines what care would be given to that animal, and if that animal lives or dies or goes straight to the shelter, which then requires an additional pickup by the animal control officer to transport that animal to the shelter. I believe our current animal control officer is on call until midnight. I got that from the lady I spoke to at the bank the other day. She was exhausted. It was 4:30. She was at the bank, and she was going to be on call till midnight, and she'd worked a whole day shift. If our small city needs code enforcement 7 days a week, how can they possibly assume the workload of an animal control officer? When I see animal control officers on the street and at the emergency animal hospital in Grand Terrace, I often thank them for their job that they do because it takes a very special type of person to be able to do it. They are police officers for the animal world, and the animal control officers that work Grand Terrace have done so for many years. They're very familiar to me. I see the same two most all the time. Grand Terrace has become a contract city. The AC service has always been contracted out, but I do not understand why it would even be considered to bring it in-house. What a nightmare it will be with additional phone calls and more work for general staff. Oh yes, and animals being abandoned at City Hall, which you go sit in the parking lot at the animal shelter, you will be shocked at what happens down there with people just dropping off animals. Please take my words into consideration. Thank you for listening. I just think that if you want to bring it in-house, you need to have a person that's just going to do that. That's not going to be writing people up for their roofing that they don't have a permit for, or their cars parked in the dirt, or all the other things that the code enforcement officers do. You need to have someone specifically for that job, whether it be part-time or full-time. But I think that you got the paperwork that shows what months have how many calls and what they're for. Look at how many dead animals are on there. People hitting them by cars, they just leave them there. But the other thing is, look at the months that have the fireworks, folks. For 20 years, I've been trying to get the fireworks stopped in Grand Terrace.
Thank
That's
you,
when
Ms.
they're really
Forbes.
busy. I'm sorry, is my time up? Thank you, I'm sorry.
And
It's a touchy subject, and yes, I'm one of the underground people that helps the animals in Grand Terrace.
And I
probably-
noticed what this is.
emails are incorrect, yeah.
It should be grandterrace-ca.gov and not city of.
Yeah, they
There
keep
you go. That's
changing it
probably what
to-
happened.
To confuse us,
And
including
then
myself.
Councilmember Henderson has a middle initial in his as well.
Yeah, it still had Richard's, Reinhardt's?
Brian Reinhardt is still on there?
His was still on there, by the
Okay.
way. And
Interesting.
so thank you for the correction. I'm glad Deborah helped me out with it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we have a request to speak from Gina Madrano.
I'm Gina Madrano. Our address is 12384 Pascal. When I first heard of this idea, first thing I thought was we're trying to save money for the city. The second thing I thought was the cost of equipment, maintenance, storage, and what do we do with those that have to be trained, the cost of the training. They not only have to be trained for various cats and dogs and sizes of dogs, but as the gentleman pointed out, it's not because of our city and our special location. We do have wildlife virtually surrounding us, and as the days get hotter and the years get hotter, we're going to find more of that wildlife coming into our cities. Snakes are going to be the least. We're going to have more than just little snakes coming in. We always have them coming down from Blue Mountain. We're going to have more of that and other types of wildlife coming in, and there's going to have to be special training. That's increasing cost. I suggest, or I hope the council will really proceed slowly on this and really examine the exact cost that will entail this type of change. Frankly, I don't think it's a good idea. But thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for waiting for this item, and I appreciate your comments, Ms. Madrano. All right, are there any other requests to speak at this time? right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for their consideration. Councilmember Hussey.
I'd like to make a motion to consider proposal reorganizing code enforcement and bringing animal control services in-house by creating a new animal control code enforcement position, and number 2, to direct staff to move forward with this proposal.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Hussey, second by Councilmember Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes with council members Henderson, Hussey voting yes, Mayor McNabo voting yes, Councilmember Wilson and Mayor Pro Tem Robles vote no.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the next item, which is city manager update.
Yes, Mayor, and because of the late hour, I will just jump to just one of the items. Well, maybe two. So just very quickly, that we are in our final phase of the dog park construction. We believe that the contractor all the plants will be planted by next Friday, and he'll just be doing minimal work. And so at that point in time, we'll be able to, the plants will just start to take hold, and so we can start planning on an opening between Friday, the 23rd of February to April the 12th. So at some point in time within that, the council would be able to have a grand opening, and the park would be ready for use no later than April the 12th.
Okay.
In addition to that, we only have one more bench on site. All of the benches have been sold. I believe it's this bench up here, number 12. That's over here in the corner. All the other benches have been sold, and they're actually out there on site. Also, just wanted to remind the citizens and the council that we have a low-cost vaccination clinic that's going to occur on Thursday, February 22nd, 2018 at City Hall from 6 p.m. to 7:30. Pet licensing is also offered on site and online. Just, I'm not sure if the council or the citizens are aware, is that we went through, maybe about a couple weeks ago, we went through and replaced all of the safety lights at the intersection that were high sodium lights. Now they've been moved to LED lights. And here's a picture of the same corner, so you'll see where we had the old lights before and afterwards. And you can really see, at least from my point of view, the real clarity in the intersection. And just to remind the public that in March, April, all of the residential lights will be replaced by Edison to the same LED lights as part of the Edison replacement program. We're also going to be monitoring, we believe, the considerable savings, energy savings at the intersection, so we'll report back to the council on that.
All right.
Also, the Blue Mountain Hike, the 11th annual Blue Mountain Hike will take part on Saturday, March 3rd at 8 a.m. The city has a number of partners that we're working with. I just want to make a quick reference to the normal partners are the Friends of the Blue Mountain, the Sierra Club, and the Foundation of Grand Terrace. This year, to help celebrate our 40th anniversary, we'll be partnering with a group called Niantics. Niantics is the premier operator of alternate reality, and they provide the platform for a reality-based program called Ingress and also Pokemon Go. And so we have mapped out the area, and so there will be Pokemon on the mountain as part of that process. And so for every 1,000 people that I think if we have 3,000, if the hikers travel 3,000 miles on Saturday, they have committed to donating 100 trees for our future trailhead site. In addition to that, we are also going to be having tuition bites. They'll be providing breakfast burritos on site. And for every burrito that's purchased, 100% of those profits will go to Grand Terrace High School for scholarships for seniors who are going to be going to college for laptops. So we're very excited about that partnership, and I've set up the principal, Mr. Weston, with the burrito program. And this is just a quick picture of how some of the events look like with Niantics when they go out and they do these special events. And so you'll be able to see that they have quite a big turnout where people come out to play. So we are mindful of trying not to have this grow out of control. And so we are monitoring actually the press release goes out tomorrow, and we're monitoring the feedback. And based on the feedback that we get, we will then develop a plan with the Sheriff's Department and also with a parking strategy for the program. And I believe those are just parts of their websites. And with that, I'm finished.
All right.
And available for any questions, Mayor.
Any questions of Mr. Duffy? Mayor Pro Tem.
I have some input that I forgot. I've even just going to Kaiser and they see that I live in Grand Terrace, I get inundated by everyone about the empty Stater Brothers. And so I'm wondering why we don't have press releases or some kind of, and I know we discussed before, the City of Redlands does this, and perhaps the mayor and maybe someone else who feels comfortable can have on the city's Facebook, a discussion on the Stater Brothers, and because people still talk about why aren't we paying for something to happen there, and they need to understand the fundamentals have changed. We're a capitalist country. We don't create stuff with our money. There's no redevelopment, and so that might be something that we need to do.
Absolutely, and we can put that on a report back log, and we'll come up with a program to. And I think using Facebook, a 20, 30-second spot that talks about economic development, talks about the various items. What the public doesn't know, and as you are all aware, is that some of these projects take a considerable amount of time. We're working with private property owners. We don't control that. We're trying to reach out, but certainly the more we can market the city and explain to the public what's happening, we'll certainly do
And
that.
would you look at Redlands, because they're doing some kind of live Facebook interface with a city manager?
Sure, absolutely.
Or with a mayor and a city manager?
Absolutely.
Or two people from here,
Sure.
Okay,
absolutely.
And on that note, I do think there are a lot of people that believe that the city has control over all of the property.
And it's a black eye for us unless they understand what's really going on.
All right, any other comments or questions? Councilmember Hussey.
Mr. Duffy, I know it's pet-friendly going up Blue Mountain, because can we make sure we have plenty of doggy bags and trash cans so we could dump them so they just don't throw it aside? And plus a recommendation, don't eat the burrito before you go up there. On the way back.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, we will move into the last item, which is a recess to closed session. We have two items on our closed session schedule: conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code, section 54956.9, case name City of Grand Terrace versus Riverside Highland Water Company mediation, case number CIVDS 171929996. I will be recusing myself from that item as we go into closed session, and so Mayor Pro Tem will be reporting out. Item number 2 is public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Title City Attorney. I will be present in that, and I'm asking that we actually take that one first. I will mention the reason for my recusal on the conference with legal counsel is that my husband is a member of the board of directors for the Riverside Highland Water Company, and that creates a financial conflict of interest for me. So I will recuse myself from item 1. I will be present in item 2, and I will ask that my colleagues allow me to change the order, and Mayor Pro Tem, if you would please report out at the end of the session. And so that for those of you that won't be here, we will adjourn after that point to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on Tuesday, February 27th, 2018 at 6 p.m. Agenda item requests must be submitted in writing to the city clerk's office no later than 14 calendar days preceding the meeting. And happy Valentine's Day.
Okay, we'll reconvene, and this is our report from closed session. Item number 1, Conference of Legal Counsel, existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1, subdivision D, Government Code Section 54956.9, City of Grand Terrace versus Riverside Highland Water Company mediation. We gave direction to our legal counsel, and we have appointed a mediation team consisting of Councilmember Ken Henderson and Councilman Bill Hussey. On second item, public employment pursuant to Government Code 54957, City Attorney, we've given direction to staff. This concludes our meeting. The next regular City Council meeting will be held on Tuesday, February 27th, 2018 at 6 p.m. Agenda item requests must be submitted in writing to the City Clerk's office no later than 14 calendar days preceding the meeting. Thank you. We are adjourned.